The Finance Subcommittee of the City Council is comprised of 5 council members and considers any or all questions appropriate for the purpose of considering the budget, including the creation of new positions to the payroll, changes to the employee classification plan, or any matters pertaining to increasing the City of Framingham employee headcount. The following City Council Finance Subcommittee meeting coverage is brought to you by the Government Channel, a service of the City of Framingham.
City Council Finance Subcommittee with a joint meeting with the School Committee will come to order. From the City Council, all members are present in the room. We also have our new financial analyst here with us, Anthony. So our meeting is called to order, and I'll turn it over quickly to the chair of the School Committee to call her meeting to order.
All right, welcome to the Framingham School Committee meeting of Finance and Operations Joint Subcommittee meeting of Tuesday, May 26, 2026. I call this meeting to order at 5:02 p.m. In attendance tonight, we have District 3, Jennifer Mosha, District 6, Brent Lewis, District 7, Kyle Shepard, District 8, Jessica Barnhill. We're also joined by Superintendent Dr. Robert Tremblay, Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Assistant Superintendent Ann Ludes. This meeting live on the Government Channel in Zoom. A recording of this meeting will be archived on the City of Framingham and School Committee websites as soon as possible. Tonight, our agenda includes public comment, discussion of FY27 operating budget, and an updated proposal from the mayor. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. First order of business is public participation. We ask if you want to publicly participate, feel free to do so, unless it is something that is on the agenda, which the budget is. So if you want to publicly comment on anything that's not on the agenda, please feel free to take the mic, and we'll give you 3 minutes. If not, we'll wait for the agenda item. We have one person on Zoom. Mr. Bloomfield, if it's on the budget, you have to wait. If it's not on the budget, you get 3 minutes.
I understand. It's not on the budget. It's on your first line item of your agenda. Blue State, Blue Framingham, Blue City Blues. That's what we got. And before I make my other comments, I just want to let you know that congratulations are in order, because Framingham made the Herald as the #2 highest number of layoffs in the school department area for the state. Just devastating. As far as my comment on, I want to know, are you on the agenda item for the apartment houses?
No, this is public participation. That's next. If you want to speak on that, I'll call on you for that. But no, we have not. I just opened up the meeting, and it's public participation on anything that's not budget related or on our agenda. And you already started with on the budget stuff, so just like the other night. But if you want to talk on the agenda items, just sit tight and we'll call on you. I promise. We always do.
I got you. I'm waiting.
Okay, then. Thank you. Okay. First order of business. Order 2026-048. This was postponed from our past Finance Subcommittee of 5/20/26. It's upon the request of SEB Housing referral to the Finance Subcommittee the approval of affordable rents and affordable unit income limits for Bancroft Lofts and Union House, or Alta Union House. Mr. Cashman, you are online, correct? I will allow you to talk and make your presentation.
I'm here. Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you, and you're unmuted, and you've got your time for your 3-minute presentation.
Great, thanks. SEB Housing on behalf of Bancroft Lofts and Union House. As I think some or maybe many of you are aware, these properties have affordable units that are governed by a regulatory agreement. Per the terms of the regulatory agreement, every year when HUD publishes income limits, which impact eligibility for the program, rents are to be recalculated in line with the new income limit. So this is a yearly procedure that happens for affordable units all across the state, whether it's in Framingham or anywhere else. And we, on behalf of the properties we work with, we just calculate the rents, which is a formulaic methodology. There's no discretion in it. We're just using the income limits. We use the methodology that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities provides to us. and we punch up the rents for them and we submit them. Now, one thing I just want to say, for these properties, I did just submit, whatever the rents would be in line with 2026 income limits. However, Union House hasn't gotten any rent increases in 3 years, and Framingham didn't get any rent increase last year. I think they got a 3% increase the prior 2 years. So I am mindful, and the properties are mindful, that just going to whatever the 2026 rents are would be a big jump for many residents that could cause displacement that nobody wants. So they're certainly willing to accept, I think, something less than just the straight 2026 maximum, perhaps a percentage increase, something along the lines, I've spoken with them, of 5%. They'd be very happy with if the city was inclined to allow that. I just ran some of the figures before the meeting. Even if the city were to approve a 5% increase for residents, you'd still have many residents paying hundreds of dollars less than the otherwise maximum allowed. You have a number of residents with vouchers, so their personal portion of rent doesn't really change. It's just tied to their income. The voucher picks up the rest. And you've got a bunch of residents whose rent, like I said, hasn't changed in years or has changed only minimally. And of course, you have the properties who, their costs go up. I think CPI is at 3.8%. They're not looking to just gouge people, but they are mindful of their own rising costs and wanting to be able to provide a good product. And, having some increase in rents for affordable units is important to that. So I'll leave it there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Right on 3 minutes. I'm going to open it up to the City Council. Councilor Canning, your hand was up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see the school committee here. Thanks for letting us do our little dog and pony show before we get to our joint business. Mr. Chairman, did we, and perhaps it's a question for the mayor's office, did we get any clarity on if there was some confusion last year and in previous years of whether or not this is actually council action for us to take, or if this is more of an executive function? I mean, if we're put in a position to vote on this again, I'm a no, but also, as this is discussed in terms of in the context of affordable housing rents being increased, as we deliberate our budget, we should be acutely aware that this is impacting, every layer of cost is increasing no matter what. So something that we should be mindful of regardless. But did we ever, I don't know that we actually put a formal request into the city solicitor at one point, or?
Yeah, I was the chair of the council at that time, not this committee, but I don't think we ever got any clarification one way or another. If it was our responsibility, we were told it was our responsibility, but I don't know if it was ever reached out and we got a clarification, if it's something the mayor, because I think Mr. McDowell came into us and explained with his situation at the Buckley was, and I don't think we gave anybody, I think, because this company represents these two folks. I think McDowell's got his group that represents him at the Buckley, but I don't believe we did anything. We gave nobody any increase last year, but I think he was trying to work something out with the administration, but I've never seen anything.
Unless the administration has something to weigh in with, is there any reason that we need to take action on this tonight, or can we ask the city solicitor to weigh in with some formal guidance and perhaps put this on a future meeting?
Is that a motion, Councilor Canning?
If there's no objection, I'll make that motion.
Yeah, that motion. Is that a
Yes,
second?
can I just add to it?
Gladly, of course.
I would also thank you to the gentleman who spoke earlier. I would like to, in addition to that, know two things. I appreciate your willingness to work with us on this. The rent you have listed, $2,742.50, $3,085, $34.27 for 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. I'd like to know how many of the current occupants are actually paying that. And I'd like to know what these numbers were for the previous year. We list 2026 proposed, but no 2025. So if we could add that to our list for when we reconvene.
So did you hear that? If you can clarify that a little bit, and we're going to reach out to our city solicitor. We're meeting 3 times this week, but it's not going to happen this week because we'll put it on a meeting. If we meet next week, I'll put it on a meeting for next week so we can get it resolved one way or another. But I'll make sure our admin, Ms. Kelly, or who runs the show for us, actually, she'll reach out to the city solicitor on my behalf, and we'll get an answer, and then we can reconvene. Any other comments from the council? Seeing none, we're all in the room. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, the vote was 5-0. Thank you, and Ms. Kelly will be in touch with you when we can get this on the next agenda.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Next order of business, upon the request of the mayor and by direct referral to the Finance Subcommittee by the council chair, consideration of the new operating budget and enterprise budgets for FY 2027 municipal reorganization. Who's going to handle that from your end?
Well, Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, we have officially submitted the budget now. I think Marion received it on Friday, is that right, Marion, or Thursday? And it's consistent with what we discussed last week. It's the same number, 398 million plus or minus,
3.5, 10 million, same thing?
using 3.5% tax levy and 10 million in free cash as the revenue sources. And as we indicated, that's going to require some serious cuts to the operation, both in reduction in services and cutting of some personnel. And we're still working on those details. We're moving ahead on a few things. I'm advancing the proposal for reorganization of a couple of different departments. And we made a decision today, as a matter of fact, to not go ahead with a fireworks display for this year for a number of reasons, mainly budgetary. So we're still working on the details, and as we develop the details of where those cuts are going to be, we'll bring them forth to you as you discuss them with the different departments during the week. But the number is the number that we gave you last week.
Okay. I'll open it up to the council. Any questions from the council? Council Stefanini.
Thank you. A request and a question. When you submit the budget to us, can you give us the budget in an Excel spreadsheet? I know you posted online in a PDF because it's easier to do. It's actually easier here to have it in a manipulatable format.
Through you, Mr. Chair, of course, we can submit that in an Excel format to the subcommittee.
Or whatever, yeah.
We can do that.
And
And
when
we'll
do
do
you, Mr. Mayor, when do you see, we should talk through the reorganization plans. When do you see actually submitting a reorganization plan to the council?
That'll be submitted before June 30th for your consideration as because we got to go through a whole process of you holding public hearing and everything. As far as the budget's concerned, the proposed budget is going to reflect the proposed reorganization plan in terms of how it's affected by the dollars. But the plan itself that you need to act on, you'll receive that by the end of June for discussion in early July.
So are you going to go through your reorganization plan right now?
I can, if you like, I can discuss it in not a great level of detail, but I can give you the broad outlines of it.
I think the Cliff Note version would be good for us to hear.
Yeah.
Please.
All right, is that what you want,
That's
Mr.
what we
Chairman?
want.
It involves a couple of different departments. It involves combining Park and Rec and facilities into one department with one director, which would eliminate one position, the current director of Parks and Recreation. The second reorg would be, and part of that reorg would separate the Callahan Center from the Park and Rec Division and move it into the library division. And so the library would become the Library and Cultural Affairs Division, for want of a better name at this point. And the director of the libraries would assume responsibility of the Callahan Center, possibly the veterans as well. And it would result in the elimination of the current director's job at Callahan Center. So those are the first two positions that we've identified that would be eliminated as part of the reorganization.
Council Stefanini.
Have you considered adding taking parks and splitting maintenance from recreation and putting recreation in with the cultural?
Programming and maintenance of the parks would continue to be part of the park department. They wouldn't be split off. It would be just joined with the the building facilities division into one new division. That would have it would accomplish what we're trying to accomplish with the least amount of disruption with the staff.
So the only concern I would have is making sure that recreation has a clear voice in a department that's focused on sweeping floors. And we can get to that when we get to
Yeah.
that point.
Yep.
Councilor King.
So I understand, obviously, these are difficult times on both sides of the room here for both the reductions the school department has to make and the reductions that you've obviously in the process of making. And, I've been there before, and it's not fun because it does involve people, and, you feel very, very bad for those people, and I know you do, Mr. Mayor. That having been said, I do think that these are the types of reductions that have to occur in difficult times, and it's very unfortunate. But I do appreciate the creativity and thought that went into this idea, because I think it's a situation that allows us to continue to provide services, maybe even better services, in a manner that costs less money. Because, again, I feel very badly for the people involved, but I've advocated before that I think we have to consolidate at higher levels and have people who are paid and employed at higher levels do more, organize more, so we can make sure we take whatever limited resources we have and make sure they're in the front-facing area, be it the park department, be it the school department, be it anywhere else. That's what we have to do. So I know how difficult it must be, but I appreciate your thoughtfulness on it.
Anybody else? Councilor Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to learning more about the details here and how some of that is going to work. But help me understand a little bit. Are we still with a reorganization that is designed to create efficiency, save money, save the taxpayer some burden? This is still going to cost more to operate in terms of government expense? Help me. I may just be misunderstanding. I hope I am anyway.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but as I pointed out, the reorgs I just outlined will result in the elimination of 2 supervisory positions. So it's definitely a savings, and it goes toward the amount of money that we have to cut from the budget to meet what you've indicated that you're ready to approve as a budget.
I don't know that anybody has made any formal
Well,
indication.
I mean,
but
you gave me-
I know what you're saying. I guess I'd like to learn more about the details. I know that's coming. I appreciate that we're entering a period of making some choices that you've been uncomfortable making for a long time, but the situation is what the situation is. And I think there could be great opportunity, the blending of, I think there's a lot of synergy within parks and facilities, and likewise within libraries and cultural affairs, and I think there's a lot of overlap with veterans and senior services, things like that. So I look forward to those details. All right, I'll leave it there, and we'll continue to learn more. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Malik.
Thank you. I'll just echo the concerns of Councilor Stefanini that the recreation piece not get lost in a facilities department.
Thank you. Out in Zoom land, Mr. Bloomfield, 3 minutes. Jerry?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now,
Can you
yeah.
hear me? All right. You threw me off guard there because you got me away from the line item I wanted to speak about.
Well, that's because we continued it, so I
okay.
figured there was no reason to talk about it if we were pushing it down the road. But you're up now, unless
Okay.
you're up on this, if you want to chat.
But I just want to ask this thing because it's driving me crazy, and someone there might know. If we have affordable apartments
Back to the line item.
in the equation, who pays for the affordable apartments? Is it the landlord, the owner, developer, or do the other tenants pick up the slack of the people that get affordability rate breaks by way of this line item?
Section 8
other
vouchers,
words-
federal government, local government, state government.
Yeah.
That's how those
Somebody's
vouchers
paying-
work.
somebody-
Somebody's paying, don't worry about that.
Yeah, and I figure it's the tenants. So now they're going to pay additional money on top of the money they're going to pay by way of their rents to pay for the higher increase in the in the taxes. It's too bad. Okay, I lost myself. Oh, yeah, here we go. I was saying earlier about the fact that we made the Herald front page.
This is reorganization. This isn't the budget yet. The budget's the next item. This is reorganization. The mayor presented his Cliff Note version of eliminating some positions and putting some positions together. The budget is coming up next.
I'll shift to that right now. So most people in the workplace work at 80% efficiency, and between functions, they're at 80% while they're shifting from one function to another. So overall utilization rate of around 65%. If we could achieve that, it would be fair, but I'm not sure we are doing that. So therefore, when people have free time or slack time, they should be able to go off to another department and work at another department in the building or close by to help support a group that's got more work than they can handle. So they smooth out the workload all week long, all along, but not just within the department, but a connected department. And it improves the efficiency. If you improve the efficiency, you lower the cost, but at no harm to anybody, because most people want to work, and they want to work busy, and they want to be busy during the day, as it makes the day go by quicker, and it's just a happier environment. So I'm hoping that there's going to be some cross-training built into this reorganization piece as a complement to the reorganization of the various departments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bloomfield. Mr. Epstein in the back, 3 minutes.
Okay, Jeff Epstein, Astoka Lane. I just want to ask a clarifying question. Does this mean that Randy Aylesworth in the senior centre is going to be fired?
I don't know if he's going to be fired, but I would assume it means he's being laid off.
He's going to move out of that position of director?
Is
that correct?
I'm going to ask the administration. They made the call, not us, but that's what I would assume based on what we were told. Mr. Mayor?
That's what I said. The position is being eliminated.
Okay.
Okay, there's 20,000 seniors in the city, and they have all kinds of needs. They're a very important sector of the community, and it's hard for me to see how the director of the library could take over that role. Randy has a master's degree in aging services. He's a very skilled person who manages that department really well. So you're going to get 20,000 seniors very mad at you if you do this, and I think with good reason. So I think that is just a terrible decision.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilor Cannon, then Councilor Malik. Oh, I saw your hand first, so excuse me. So, Councilor
Just
Malik.
a quick comment. We did not receive the budget on Friday.
So I sent.
We received a budget memo. Is that what we're calling the budget? That budget memo?
We sent that in with the understanding, as I noted in there, that on Thursday, we talked to all the division heads about what we needed to make for the remaining $1.1 million gap that we had discussed with the Finance Subcommittee on Wednesday. And in there, I noted that we would provide the background material with the final changes once they were all completed, which is not yet, because all the division heads had until today to get their proposed changes or how they could restructure their individual responsibilities and what staffing changes that might look like, which we have received everything probably about an hour ago. So tomorrow we'll meet to make those final recommendations, update the blue-green sheet, all of the background material in expectation for when everyone is here on Thursday to go through that. However, the number is not going to change from the 398 that was in that PowerPoint presentation. It's just, given the timing of having that meeting with the Finance Subcommittee on Wednesday, having the division head in less than 12 hours, it was not going to be a possible feat to pull off, but there's not going to be any increases to that proposed 398 number that we have been consistent with since we came back with that revision.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Just to clarify that we don't yet have a budget. That when people email me and say, can you send me the budget? I don't have anything to
No,
send.
there's no supporting documentation yet. That's currently being finalized.
Awesome. And we'll see it on Thursday.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And would you mind also looping in the school committee on those as well? So we've been asking for it too. We have not received anything.
Okay, sure, absolutely.
About it once. Councilor Cannon, you're up, sir.
Thank you, and thank you to Councilor Malik for clarifying that, because the thing doesn't exist formally yet. I just wanted to, and I'm hopeful, Mr. Mayor, as you work through a lot of these details, and I appreciate that a lot of this work is being done on the fly, are we endeavoring to find solutions that are less public-facing than some of the ones that you mentioned in our, I think it was our last meeting, shutting down or reducing service to the library on the busiest of days over the weekend, same with the recycling center and whatnot. Are we still working on that, or is that basically set in stone?
Nothing's set in stone until the council votes the budget, but we have endeavored to do what you're talking about, and this is what we've come up with. The service cuts that I've mentioned, we're still working on the details of what personnel we're going to have to lay off to meet the requirements of the revenue projections, and it's not an easy task. We're in very uncharted waters here with what we're doing, and we're working as hard as we can to minimize the impact, but there's going to be pain, and you got to admit there's going to be some pain here, and we're trying to minimize that, but it's going to happen.
Okay, so I'm just hopeful that you'll reconsider. I recognize the set-in-stone analogy is probably an imperfect one, but it sounds like you're satisfied that the way to achieve this is still the most public-facing solutions, if you want to call them that you reference. I mean, it seems to me, and I don't run the place.
Are we discussing reorganization?
I'm sorry?
We're discussing reorganization, by the way.
That's what he's talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. So I'm hopeful that in the course of you working on this, that among the issues you're reconsidering is avoiding, I mean, it's very public. It's what communities do. That when a mayor gets in a pissing match with the city council, what do? They cut the first thing that is the most public-facing, like shutting down the library over a weekend, the busiest days, or our DPW facilities on its most widely used days. Many people in our community work over the course of the week. So I'm not satisfied with there's going to be pain. I recognize that. I'm just hopeful that we're continuing to work on solutions that before we get to things that are so not just publicly facing, but in the foreground of the services that we offer the public, that we've done everything we can to avoid that. Instead, they're among the first things that you've announced. So I think the point is made, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I might want to point out, too, tomorrow night at your meeting, the Director of Libraries will be here, and the Director of Public Works will be here, so you can discuss those changes with them as well.
I appreciate that, but, and I'll leave it here, Mr. Chairman, but with your permission, I'd like to respond to that. The folks that work for you in those roles are going to support the decision that their boss makes. I get that. I expect that both of those folks will professionally reflect your instructions.
I do, too.
Great. What I'm asking you to do as a elected member of this community as well is find ways to minimize the pain from the public. The first things that you announced in our last meeting were things that were very publicly facing. Shutting down our libraries to, I think, a substantial extent over the course of the weekend. That's not a let's minimize, let's work hard, let's do things inside the building that the public doesn't see. That's a bold headline thing. Eliminating the person that runs senior services for the community as a position is a very, I'm surprised it's among the first things that you're doing. So I'm hopeful that you're continuing to be nimble and working on solutions that are less directly facing the public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Nope. Next person is Merle G. If it's on the reorganization, feel free to speak. If it's on the budget, that is our next line item, so you tell me.
It's on the reorganization.
Okay, great, you're up, 3 minutes.
So I have a question related to senior services, and I know that there is a movement to transform Marion High School into a multi-generational community center. I'm assuming senior services would be moving to that new center. What we need someone who is very knowledgeable about senior services to be working on that.
Are you asking the mayor or somebody a question, or are you going to give you 3 minutes of statement? What are we doing?
Well, I'm thinking that this is an interesting time, and Mayor, and thinking about senior services and supervision that's required. How are services going to be developed, expanded when we move to the community center?
I don't know if there's any role of the senior center moving to the community center, seeing that the Blades family put up all kinds of money to the senior center we have, but God only knows, and God only knows when that's gonna be done already, but I'll see if the mayor or the administration wants to comment. Are you all set with your question?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Any response on that, or?
No decision has been made to move any senior services to the proposed community center. So anything that raises to a concern about that is kind of premature until more definite plans are proposed, and that hasn't happened yet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All good on the reorg? Number 3, a joint discussion.
Mr. Chairman, can I?
Yeah, Councilor King, didn't see your hand.
So I would just like to say that I think that, we're just hearing about this in the last 15 minutes. We know there are difficult decisions that have to be made. I just hope we can take some time and understand it. I don't believe this administration would leave senior services lacking in the community. I'm confident that the plan that they have in place, which we haven't seen yet other than just a very broad stroke, will maintain, and I have to believe maybe even improve senior services, because otherwise I don't think they would try something like that. So I just hope that, if we ask them to make difficult choices and decisions, I think we have to then respect when those decisions will be made, at least to give them the opportunity to explain how it will work and why it will work, given the circumstances we face. I mean, we have alternatives. We definitely have alternatives. If we want to raise the taxes 4, 5.5%, 6%, we can do that. And we can spend $14 million in free cash. We'd probably be shutting just about everything down next year if we do that. But we could do it for another year, and then, sometimes next year comes, sometimes it doesn't, it seems. So, but I mean, we're in a difficult situation now, so I understand why emotions are high. But I do think when we ask for things and we get them, we're not all the mayor, and we're not all, going to agree on what we should do. I probably would have a different approach. Mike would probably have a different approach, and the mayor has a different approach. But I think we have to respect the approach and then understand why it's going to work and why it saves us money, even if it may not be the first approach that we would have picked.
Thank you, Councilor King. And I wasn't going to say anything, but we sit up here and we tell them they're the professionals. They're the professionals. Go make your budgets work. We're not going to cut positions, and then come back with some type of thought and some cuts. And they're the ones in charge. They're going to make the decisions. But I agree with you. I'm going to say it again. I think we go out to the voters. I don't care how long it takes. It doesn't take long. Do a referendum question. You want to raise the taxes another 5 or 6%? Raise them. If the voters say okay. I don't mind. If they say, okay, write the checks. But we're in a real touch-and-go situation. And then, sometimes we don't like ideas that some people bring up because of maybe who brings them up. The other night, I'm not keen on rewriting a mortgage for 30 years, okay? But to rewrite it for a year, if it solves a quick fix and gets you $5 million and it works for 1 year while we figure out the problem, maybe that's the answer. I don't know what the answer is. Doesn't work, okay. Well, I want to hear from the superintendent and their CFO, and, we keep hearing numbers of schools, and this is coming up. I'll give this little talk in about 2 seconds. So we're all set on the reorg? Next order of business. A joint discussion with the school committee, finance subcommittee, superintendent, executive director, and the finance and operations of the school department. We're joined here tonight with our colleagues from the school committee. I think it's a well-needed meeting. We met back before. We need to come up with some type of collaboration or be on the same page, because, when my phone starts ringing, it wasn't ringing until the people start making comments in the newspaper, and then my phone doesn't stop ringing, okay? We're defeating the purpose. If we're not going to work together and try to be on the same page, you folks presented a budget, then it changes and this and that. I want to know how many school teachers are actually going to be gone. How many in the transition, how many jobs get absorbed, how many real teachers are cut from the programs, and is it 80, is it 120, is it more like 15 or 20 in the big picture? Just what the real number is, just so we're all on the same page, because we're not all on the same page. And when we hear from people that talk to principals and they hear different feedback, there's some concern that the stories aren't all straight. And then I was sitting with you at a scholarship luncheon that's supposed to be a nice day for, actually, 10 people got $5,600 scholarships or $5,800 from the Rotary, and actually, 8 of them are in Framingham schools or at Keefe Tech. And you're getting a text message, and I'm getting a text message that they're closing an elementary school in Framingham, which had no rhyme or reason. But that was the text message I got, and you got the same one I got. So it gets old after a while. And you know what? And I said it before, my daughter's 20 years old. She interns, we'll put it out there, 1 day a week at Dunning. She's at LaSalle to be a school teacher. She's finishing her junior year. But people shouldn't go through my kid to get to me. I'm an open book. Phone number, 24/7. The phone sleeps next to me on the pillow. You need to reach me, reach me. You don't need to get to me through my daughter. I'll just leave it at that. You're up, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us back.
Welcome.
Tensions are a little high. We're obviously accompanied by a lot of students, so if we can keep this professional, I'd appreciate it. And
Professional swears.
your constituents are our constituents, so we're looking forward for the opportunity to collaborate. Over the past several months, as you know, we've been deep in the budget throes of going through student impact and analyzing these cuts that we've been presented. We've had in-depth conversations and discussion, always keeping a student-centric approach. And we've been navigating a lot of these challenges that, judging on the tension level of this room, it seems like you guys have been also navigating these challenges as well. Next week is June, and we hadn't had complete clarity on a definitive number. All right, the school committee voted on a budget, $190,457,868. Okay, we're analyzing student impact. We have been having the conversations. We have been having the tough questions have been asked, and we've been in it since we last met before here. All right, so we've been going through it, analyzing constituent feedback, city feedback, city council feedback, student impact, student feedback, teacher feedback. I don't know what a real teacher is, but I mean, what's opposed to a fake teacher? Like, they're all real teachers, right? That was mentioned before. So we're here to just thank you for the opportunity to be here and to join in part of this conversation and work through this together. So.
Can you clarify on that school committee vote? Was it unanimous, or what was the vote number?
It was not unanimous. It was there was 2 opposing votes, so it was 7-2.
So
We're a body of 9. Yep, 7-2.
we're all on the same page.
7-2. We submitted that budget.
All right, I'll open it up. We're going to go back and forth, but I'll open it up to the city council.
Well, are we doing public comment first?
Well, here's the question. Do they want to hear us deliberate and then discuss the budget? Because under our rules, it's 15 minutes of public participation. We can waive the rules. We want to hear from everybody, but we don't want to hear the same thing we heard at our last city council finance subcommittee. We want to hear some new information. We want to hear from everybody. It's an open forum, but we have to make a couple of ideas. Do you want to publicly participate now? It's 15 minutes, 3 minutes a person. We're going to have more than, I believe, than that based on what's in the room, and we already have 1, 2, 3, 4 hands up. Or do you want to wait? We talk, the school committee talks, we go back and forth, and then you people can ask questions on the budget.
Well, I would propose this. So usually what we do is if there are more than 15 minutes worth of public comment, we cut it down immediately to 2. That's the first move. All right, so 2 minutes per person, not 3 minutes per person.
But you're going to have more than, you're going to.
And we're going to listen. I mean, we're elected to listen. That's what we're here, and I'd rather stay here longer and listen to whoever showed up and whoever's on Zoom and wants to get their voice heard. And what we do not do, though, in the school committee is it's not a dialogue. If we're going to stop and pause and ask for questions, that is going to affect our deliberations, because at a certain point, we need to have those discussions, and we need to have that deliberation time here.
So I'm going to ask the question again. Seeing it's the city council called the meeting, and we invited you people to join us tonight. Are we going to let people talk now for 2 minutes apiece?
Yes.
And then not be able to talk again after we deliberate? Or you'd rather them do that than us deliberate and then have them ask questions later?
I think at a certain point, we should go before, and then if we're like a half an hour in and you want to pause and do the rest of it later, we'll keep the list and we'll continue. That's what I've done in
I
the
only have one
past.
person on the list.
You said there were 4
I have
online,
4.
and
I
there's
have 4.
plenty of people in the audience.
I agree. So we're doing it one way or the other. Are we going to start and let everybody have 2 minutes to speak? Is that what the people would prefer?
Yes, I see some head
Councilor King.
nods.
So I'd be happy to listen to everybody who would like to speak. Just, I have a general idea, I think, looking from my seat, how people feel who are sitting in the room, at least. They have very distinctive signs in the front row facing right at me, et cetera. So I have a general idea of what their position is, and we've heard it in recent weeks. So in fairness to them, I have no problem with them speaking, but I would think, maybe I'm wrong, they might want to hear us deliberate first, but how do they know what to say to us? I mean, other than their general support, which is clear, but they don't even know what we're thinking, so we haven't discussed it.
Seeing a number of young children in the room, and I'm sorry to interrupt, I think as a mom sitting with a young kid, I'd rather get it in, and you never know what, you got to run out to go to the bathroom, or they're losing interest,
Why don't we do
so.
half and half?
But what are they commenting on, though?
speak once.
What are they commenting on? We haven't discussed anything.
We need to ask them. We have public documentation.
What's that?
They've had documentation in the
I
public,
understand that, but I just,
and they've seen it, they've heard you, they've heard us. If we give them the opportunity to speak, we can hear them. Perhaps it's going to change what our thought process is, listening to them as well.
And if people would like to
I haven't-
yield.
Time out a second.
No, I'm co-chairing this.
One person at a time, okay?
If
One
people would
person.
like
I
to
had the
yield
floor
their
at
time
one
at the
point.
You have the
end.
floor at the time, Ms. Bonnell, okay?
Yeah, I did.
The last time I checked, we invited you folks in here for a joint meeting, but this isn't going to go back and forth, or it's not going to go well
So-
tonight. That's all I'm going to tell you.
I don't appreciate being suggesting I don't want to listen to people. I do.
We listen more than anybody.
We do listen all the time. I'm happy to listen to
I
everybody.
lost my job.
And-
Who has the floor,
and
him
so-
or you?
I had the floor.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's not that I don't want to listen. I just want, but I also, again, I know how they feel so far, but I might be more interested in their specific comments about things that we develop here as opposed to, but either way is fine. I don't really care, but I want to make their comments as valuable as possible, given the time they spent to come down here.
Kyle, your guy Kyle. And
Might we, out of consideration for anybody with small children here who wants to say anything, allow them at least to speak first?
That's what we'll.
Okay, yeah.
The teachers would mansplain me.
I had no
Thank
problem
you.
either way, but I just,
Thank you.
it's not that hard. We've all had kids, or most of us have had
And
kids.
if anyone would like to yield their time, maybe you can just wait till the end.
Counselor Cannon.
I'm hopeful that we can all take a breath. The passion that's in the room, and I'll wait for everyone on the board to stop speaking, so we're just attending the same meeting. Terrific. I'm hopeful we can all take a breath. The passion, and maybe tension to a certain extent in the room, is due to our collective passion for the community that we serve, the children we're charged with making sure have the tools that they have to have an education that gives them the life and the path that so many in this community have thrived with for so long. I think it might be helpful, and again, I think we're all on the same page that we'll stay here as long as we need to, that's fine. I think there's some clarifying information that might be helpful to the council, and I think the community as well. I would have walked in the room a few nights ago thinking that 81 school teachers that are teaching classes today are being cut. And because that's kind of what I heard from people that work for our school system, from some current and former members of the school committee. And I'm grateful that other members have had the opportunity to talk to staff and talk to other leaders in the school department. I'm unclear on what that number actually is, and it seems like it's a pretty simple answer. Of those 81, if that's still the number, how many of those roles are vacant? I asked the question, I expected a number back, and I got like reams of data. But I'm looking for kind of the executive summary there, because I think many people in the room think that some of those cuts are a teacher in a classroom, and maybe some of them are. I'm unclear. But I think that might be helpful, and some of the other information that's come up. So it may be helpful to give the administration of the school department the opportunity to answer some of the questions that Councilor Stefanini and others have brought up. And if they need reminding, that's fine, because I think that's not just helpful for the council and the school committee, but for the public. And I'm on board with letting anybody talk, as we always are on the city council. But I think that information might be helpful to set the table for the discussion. Does that make sense, Mr. Chairman? Is that helpful?
It makes sense, but because you've got people there out there saying with young school children that want to go home, and which is understandable.
It's a matter of 3-4 minutes.
It isn't. Once we get
To
into
start
that,
the discussion? Okay.
I think that conversation is 45 minutes back and forth, because you're right, there isn't a cliff note.
Of the 81 positions, how many of those are vacant?
I have lots of questions about that when we get into that.
I do too, when we get there, but, okay. I mean, however all right.
Let's hear from people.
All right, we're going to call on folks. I'm going to call on the first person that signed up, just because they're signed up. Simon Tengelson, and I apologize if I said it wrong. Thank you. Yeah, 2 minutes, folks. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Simon Tangleson, and I am in 4th grade at Brophy Elementary. I know our city is having money problems, and I understand adults have to make hard choices. But I want to ask you to please not take money away from our schools. School is really important to kids like me. It is where we learn math, reading, science, and how to work together and solve problems. But school is also where we feel safe, make friends, and have teachers who care about us. If schools lose money, kids will notice. Classes will get bigger. The programs kids love could disappear, like SAGE and art. Teachers might feel more stressed, and students might not get the help they need. This is already happening in our school. When I was in 1st grade, there was a kid that needed more support, and he wasn't getting it. Almost every day for months, we had to leave our classroom so we could be safe. This was really disrupted to me personally and made me feel really anxious. After a long time, he got some help, and thankfully now we are friends. If you take more money from the kids, problems like these will just get worse. Kids only get one childhood and one education. The choices you make now will affect us for the rest of our lives. Please remember that when you support schools, you are supporting the future of our whole city. One day, kids like me will grow up to be teachers, doctors, firefighters, business owners, and leaders. We need strong schools to help us get there. Also, my middle school brother suggested you give the budget to the high school finance classes and let them come up with some ideas. Thank you.
That's a great idea. I love it.
Next speaker will go to Zoom land, Mr. Bloomfield.
Yes.
2 minutes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right, thanks. All right, thank you. Hey, listen, this is obviously not easy, and I think we got to, kind of ease off a little bit, but still be full of emotion and concern as we legitimately should be, because these are very important areas to deal with. And from my perspective, I don't really see a lot of improvement next year and the year after. And I've always said that our revenue is short of what it needs to be. And consequently, we're going to feel this level of concern going forward for multi-years. And I think this bigger picture here that we have to understand relative, and it's been mentioned before, what the collective bargaining agreement units are going to be looking for coming up over the next 12 months, and put a hold on that until we get a handle on this and make necessary changes to the steps, lanes, stipends, COLA, and health insurance. We all know that the employees, whether they're teachers or very important participants in the school cycle, they're all relevant and all necessary, and if we have all the costs tied up in 75% of the budget with employees, we got to be extremely careful as to how we deal with it, and so on and so forth. And then there's other things like, are we getting the right revenue? We were promised when we did all those pot and weed shops and brought them into the city that there'd be a lot of revenue to the city to help us, but I've heard nothing about what specifically are we receiving for FY26 revenues from those activities. And I don't want to belabor this any further, but when we look, when I mentioned to you about the blue city in a blue state and the devastation of the number of people that are being considered to be let go from the city side compared to the city side, from the school side compared to the city side.
You got to wrap it up, Mr. Bloomfield. It's over 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Next speaker on Zoom, Catherine Smith.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Smith, and I am speaking tonight representing the Framingham Special Education Parent Advisory Council, known as CPAC. We are deeply concerned about the proposed budget cuts to the schools. Further reductions will directly harm our students. Fewer resources mean fewer essential supports for all learners, including our most vulnerable. These cuts will lead to fewer staff members to maintain safe, stable school environments, ultimately weakening educational programs across our entire district. Crucially, we must recognize that cutting funding today is a short-sighted fiscal decision that will compound our financial challenges tomorrow. When we eliminate supports now, minor learning and behavioral hurdles inevitably escalate into severe gaps. This guarantees a sharp, long-term increase in the number of students who will require intensive, high-cost educational services in the future. We aren't saving money, we are simply deferring it to a much higher price tag later. Especially in challenging financial times, our decisions must reflect a commitment to continuous, sustained improvement for every Framingham student, particularly those who are duly identified as special education students and English language learners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Jessica Villataro, or Toro, I apologize.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yep.
Great. This city and school committee must find a way to fully fund our schools. Failing to do so will directly impact students' learning, growth, and long-term success. Cutting teachers, building administrators, and building programs are not the answer. Positions within Central need to be more closely looked at. There needs to be greater transparency from Central regarding their spending, priorities, and decisions, because in my opinion, those priorities and decisions do not align with supporting students. School committee needs to provide more oversight of Central and know what is going on at a very detailed level, which is not happening now, and allowing Central to make poor decisions. Supporting our students should be a top priority and not an optional consideration. The city and school committee, I implore you, please work together collaboratively and creatively to identify solutions that ensure our schools receive the funding they need. Putting students and teachers first should be the standard and not the exception. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members in the room, if anybody would like to publicly participate for 2 minutes, please raise your hand, just identify where you live, and we're more than happy to hear from you folks. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Pam Keeney. I live up on Grove Street. My daughter is a teacher in the Framingham Public Schools for over 20 years. I'm a senior citizen, not a native to Framingham. I think the whole thing is a quality of life issue. I think we need to give the teachers in the schools as much money as they need to do a good job. They do a fantastic with what they have. And combined with the discussion I heard previously about reduction in senior services, reduction in library, combining park and rec with buildings and grounds, I feel like I'm kind of watching a train wreck here. And I really would like, I don't know how we got to this point. I'm not an expert. I don't know how we can get out of this, but we certainly need to work together, and especially for the kids, but also for all of the citizens of Framingham. I wouldn't mind paying a little bit more in taxes. I don't know why that's always a big no-no, but, you know, just throwing it out there. I hope you all work hard for the quality of life of this town, because we've got great people, great teachers, great kids, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out. Mr. Blummer in the back.
Adam Blummer, District 2. This meeting's a little maddening to me because we're an hour into it and I don't know anything more about the impact of potential cuts that I knew an hour ago.
I'm with you.
So I think what the community most needs is to understand a couple of things. The 81 positions, whether those were 81 actual positions or 79 or 64, were ones that have already been voted on to get to the school committee budget that was recommended. So what I really need to know, and what you all need to know to make a budget decision, is what's the impact of the next 3.2 million? How many positions are those? Who's impacted? And more important, or just as importantly, what do you see as the 3 biggest educational risks and the 3 biggest fiscal risks in making those decisions? When you have that information, you can decide what it's worth. But until we know that, you're not helping make better decisions. We started to get that on the mayor's side tonight with a few things, and you see what happens. Is, every idea sounds like a good idea until it's not a good idea. But without the information, we're kind of stuck in neutral, and I just urge you to get that information to yourselves and to the public to understand, because $3.2 million is a lot of money on the school side, and then there's more to come on the city side. Thank you.
Couldn't agree more, Mr. Blummer. The woman in the back, please, with the glasses. I apologize. We know Mr. Blummer because he's a long time
No worries. Hi, thank
speaker.
you. Annette Trisello, Agnes Drive, Framingham. I am the mom of a student at Fuller Middle School, and I am also the library media specialist at Barberry Elementary School. And I would just be remiss if I didn't come up and add that additional cuts to the school budget are extremely problematic, regardless of whether they are current positions or vacant positions. These positions aren't vacant because they're not needed. They're vacant because they haven't been filled yet. So I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. I am at our schools every single day. They are not overstaffed. We do not have enough help, enough resources. There's, always room for more. And students losing essential services would be devastated to them. And not only is it the services we lose, it's the people we lose. If I were one of those people whose position was on the chopping block and then was added back, you can bet I would spend this summer looking for a new job at a district I knew valued me. This discussion has already hurt Framingham Public Schools students and our Framingham community, and I just don't want to see it do further damage. With both of my hats on, my mom hat, my Framingham school teacher hat, I'm just urging to considering increasing the taxes to help our schools. Don't pass a budget that's going to decimate the schools for our children, and especially our neediest children, our students that are identified as dual needs. It's just, I was not planning on speaking today, but I couldn't come up here and not do that. I hope the rest of this meeting goes well. I hope we can be good role models for our community and the children listening in the way in which the adults in this room speak to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Jamie Dobson, District 1, I think. Also a Framingham Public School teacher. Sorry, I didn't prepare anything, but I've been in the district for well over a decade. The majority of the time was spent at Dunning Elementary. This year I went to Walsh Middle School. I am a language development coach, and for those of you who don't know what that means that my job is to help students who are identified as English language learners and also help their teachers make sure that they're accessing the curriculum. I noticed something when I kind of went to middle school. My first year is almost done. This is the first year that I've been in Framingham that I have not been spit at, bit, kicked, had something thrown at me. Because of the needs of the students not being met. Elementary schools are really struggling with a lack of personnel. Our students deserve to be educated, whether they are neurotypical or not, whether they know English or not, whether they have the money to afford a private education or not. I've had 5 children in Framingham Public Schools. One's graduated, 2 are graduating this year, one's going into their junior year, and my youngest is in first grade. As somebody who sends their children to school here, it is a very real consideration to pull my youngest out of Framingham Public Schools and send them to private school, because they deserve the education that we should be providing. My daughter deserves to go to a school where there are people who will help her and help her classmates get the education they deserve. So we need to make sure that our number one priority as a city is funding the schools. Once you stop funding the schools, everything else goes to pot. You're going to lose. People are going to move. People are going to pull their kids from schools. You're going to lose revenue. You're going to lose, the property values are going to go down. It is not fair to the younger generations and the parents who are in this district that we are pulling money away from schools over and over again, because this is not the first year. This is not the second year. This is not the third year. We have been under taxing the citizens of Framingham, and we have been under providing for the schools. The percentage that Framingham as a city or town has contributed to the schools has reduced by 10% over the last 6 years.
You can just wrap it up because we're at 2.5 minutes for you.
You need to do better. You're elected officials. People are telling you to raise the taxes and fund the schools. You need to do it.
Anybody else in the room want to chat or speak? Seeing none, we'll go back to, Madam Chair, do we want to start with the, your school administration? To talk about, to answer Councilor Cannon and Councilor Stefanini's points or questions?
Yeah, do we have anybody online that wants to speak, or everyone's on?
Everybody spoke, that's, all the hands are done.
Yeah, having said that, I'll open it up to our district right now for their overview, and then I imagine there's going to be some sort of go back and forth. I just would like to say proactively that it's not appropriate to discuss like any cuts to positions that are not on their list of reductions. If you're going to be watching this meeting and you're hearing about a position that's being brought up in conversation that has not been brought up by the district already, it really, I think legally it puts us in a gray area, and this is a person's livelihood, their family, their relationships, and they shouldn't be hearing that for the first time. So please be considerate with that. And then obviously it just creates a tough work position as well. So with that, I'll turn it over.
Just a point of personal privilege. Has that happened tonight?
No, I'm just proactively was my word that I
Okay.
used, proactively.
I was framing my broad questions based on what I had been hearing and what I thought was all publicly reported stuff. I don't know that I'm that deep in the weeds. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't step on anyone's toes.
Proactively, thank you.
All good. Welcome, Dr. Tremblay, Lincoln, and
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us, and in the spirit of collaboration and trying to bring this to some close. Never have we gone this late in a fiscal year without having a plan for the next coming fiscal year, and I recognize that it's difficult for everyone. So let's just start with some response to Councilor Cannon's question. We're not going to quantify whether or not the open positions are different of value, just to give you the 4 categories, and then we'll break this down a bit and have as a discussion. So let's talk about open positions, transfers, non-reappointments, and then what we would call actual cuts to staffing, right? Because there's a lot of rumor out there, and let me just also preface this by saying there's no plan to close a school. I'm not sure where that came from, and it was referenced tonight by the chairman. My best guess is someone has made an association of the number of students reduced, which from the district as of today is 757 students over this time last year. So one could argue that's the equivalent of, but there was never a plan, and that creates all kinds of rumor mill and fear, and it's just, we've got to settle this with facts, and we'll do my best, and our team will do our best tonight to do so. There's some timelines to be considered, and there's some impact to be considered here for sure. I appreciate everyone's passion and willingness to work together. So again, those are the 4 categories. Let me just speak to those. So open positions, as was pointed out by previous speaker, it's not to say the positions aren't needed, but they're positions that are either vacant. They weren't filled, we had difficulty filling them, or they became vacant for some other reason, right? It could be a retirement, could be any number of reasons. They're transfers, where we've transferred some of our staff by license into other positions based on the reductions that had happened in the first round. We'll call these into 2 buckets. Since January, there's always been a proposal from the administration of 116 total positions. We can qualify those as the student-facing, teacher, classroom positions. It's very nuanced because you have people who work, staff who work with students, say in a special education situation, or a campus aide that might be providing the very points that a previous speaker made around safety in the building. And first time students we've been here together, we've heard complaints about behaviors out of control, and we've remedied that. And there's a risk, if you talk about risk, of undoing some of that work. That's a possibility, but we also have 757 less students in our schools, and we can't miss that point either. So in the buckets, so the transfers would be, the first round of the school committee approved reductions was 81 positions, just so we can set that straight. Those are, that's a variety of positions, right? It could include campus aides, special education assistant teachers, special education assistant, a dual language teacher, core and elective teachers at the high school and at Thayer, special education teachers, campus aides. I mean, the list goes on. We've made this available. In fact, it was in the school committee packet in January publicly. It's not changed. That list hasn't changed. So those 81 positions the school committee has voted. It still didn't close the gap. As you'll recall, the school committee's number was $1 million higher than at the time than the mayor's number. That mayor's number came back. We had to reduce that. So we're now at a $4 million gap. Let me go back before I lose my way on this is the non-reappoint. So every year we have positions that principals have the right to non-reappoint based on performance. And so principals have those conversations, and those are separate from the budget conversation. Then there's what we'll call the actual cuts in positions relative. So when you take the total list of reductions that are being proposed in the budget, and then you take staff that are able to fill other vacancies based on retirements, you're left with a number, right? And that number of actual cuts to staffing of the 81 is 6 actual cuts of positions, 6 staff cuts. There are 30 non-reappointments. So the principals are having those and have been having those discussions with building staff. And there have been 15 transfers, and there are 30 open positions. Again, that's predicated on the 81 positions. So we'll just create that as a separate bucket. There's deadlines that also include in that, right? So this is, if it's not already complicated, it's even more complicated because transfer notifications are due on June 1st within our contract agreement. There's no exceptions to that. There's not a willingness, I don't imagine, to extend that. Statutorily, June 15th is the deadline to notify any cuts to our staff. We are trying to avoid what's already a difficult workplace morale, as you can imagine. There's a lot of guessing, there's a lot of rumor mill. So what we don't want to be in a position to do is to lose even more of our staff, which is the risk right now. And we're predicating a lot of the conversation on, I'll just call it the 3.5% tax levy and a $10 million in free cash, which I know is a risk and not desirable for members who are sitting in the room, for everyone. I get that. My worry is we're predicating that on something that hasn't officially been voted. And so I worry about the stability of that foundation. Because what still has to be resolved to close the previous speaker's point of the remaining of the gap, and we have a plan for that, the school committee will need to vote that, but of that remaining $3.2 million, that assumes the additional Chapter 70 increase that the mayor and CFO and COO have agreed to put back into that budget. That $3.2 million, and we'll get to it in a moment, how we can close that gap, assuming the school committee approves that. We've got to get there and close the gap. But if that number were below 3.5 and below that 3.5-10 combination, and perhaps there's an appetite for that to be supported, but if not, if that number were to say be something less than that, these 116 cuts that have been proposed in total would not be able to stand, right? We would have to cut more deeply. And in that case, we're not quite sure where that would be. And as a result, and have the statutory deadline, we would have to notify all our non-PTS, our non-professional teacher status, tenured, for those of us back in the day. That's 47% of our district. So you can imagine the turmoil that would create and the chaos across the city of notifying 47% of the Framingham Public Schools staff that their position is in question.
And that's if it's not 3.5 and 10 million.
Right. So we're predicating this on something that hasn't been voted. Right. On a deadline that's fast approaching, but which doesn't necessarily align, even though we advocated in the charter to have that. We understand things happen and the timeline got kicked down the road, but it has conflated the situation in some ways that we have to be very, very careful. We don't want to be in a position, I would not want us to be in a position where we're having to notify 47% of the Framingham Public Schools that they may not come back, when in effect, it might be a total of 30 or so people that we're talking about here when this list is voted. Because what's going to happen is, without question, unless you've been on the other side of a pink slip, and I have, you leave. You leave the district because there's not confidence that your position will be restored. And if the council goes to a first vote and a second vote, if it follows schedule on June 16th, by the time it's finalized, that is the end of the market. School year is over largely, and positions have been filled in neighboring districts. So it doesn't create a market opportunity. We've been cautioning this, by the way, since January, because we want to give our educators that we have to, out of necessity, to give them the best opportunity to be employable. So we're really up against that. I also want to comment on comments that have been made previously. It was not easy for any single principal to come up with their list of reductions. The way this was structured was that we have, as I mentioned before, and I'll say it again, 757 students less in the district than this time last year. I met with all of our principals, we met with all of the principals, and we scaled it back relative to the actual, not just a guess number, but we know precisely at every school which students aren't with us. We also know the needs of those students, whether they have an IEP, whether they require English language support, whatever it may be. And we scaled back relative to the enrollment decline per school, because we know those students aren't there. So we were able to scale that back. So the principals put forward a list. It didn't hit the mark, but the principals put forward a list that scaled back their school relative to their enrollment decline. And you can imagine at the high school with 300 or so students, that's a pretty significant hit that Principal Albright had to deal with. And there's no way he can scale that back without touching additional staffing. Hence, we get into the campus aides. They're not student-facing in a classroom, but they're certainly about safety on campus. So there's going to be impacts to all this. There's no question. But we also have a duty to close the budget gap. And we have a duty to notify our staff in a timely way, and it's June, like in a minute. So I want to just put out there, so the actual impact in totals, if we were to consider the school committee's next step, in our view of this one, there's a few steps we can take. One is we go back to our original list of the 116 and the 35 positions that were not taken action on and decide what action to be taken on those. That can help to close that gap for sure. In addition to that, we have proposed, and I can stop talking in a minute for questions, but I want to just get back to the, I lost my page on this one right here. We've taken additional risk. I know that the city council, we don't want to come back before you mid-year and ask for a mid-year appropriation. But I think it's also important that we've already taken a lot of risk, as you know, in the FY27 budget. We budgeted around 61% or so on special education transportation. That's a number, on reimbursement rather, especially circuit breaker reimbursement for special education transportation. We estimate, or we're hearing, we have some reliable sources that tell us that it'll come in likely more around 75%. So taking that number in, that helps to close the gap by about $417,232. Special education, what we also have done is we put a budget slowdown for this fiscal year. It sounds like what the mayor is also doing on the city side to help slow down spending now. We have one mechanism, as many of you know, to carry that over through circuit breaker to the next fiscal year, and we can do that. Did I confuse those two numbers, Link? No, at 500,000. And then finally, we would look at what we do for some of our translation services. We spend a lot, not surprisingly, we have policies that require us to provide information to families in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. But we have some other ways to do that with staffing that we think can be an offset of about $246,612. Doesn't quite close the total gap, but those non-personnel cuts closes the gap by 1.163,844, right? So 1.2 million. Personnel cuts goes back to $2 million or so in the remaining 35 positions. It's not adding any new positions to the impact analysis. Again, everybody on that list of 116, the buckets of 81 and the bucket of 35, the remaining 35 still to be voted by the school committee, everybody on that list of 116 has been provided notice that their position is in question, essentially pink slipped. This way we would prevent having to notify any new staff. But again, it goes back to this all being predicated on a 3.5 and a 10. If that doesn't hold water, or we think there's a risk of that, right now it's a gentleman's agreement, if you will. But if that doesn't hold, we have a duty to notify our staff that this could be deeper and their jobs could be impacted legally. Otherwise, we're obligated to keep them and fund those positions. That becomes very, very problematic for everybody in this room. So that's the lay of the land, sort of facts of the matter. I'm not sure, Councilor Ken, if I answered the questions you asked about those buckets of which actual positions. Hopefully I have. If not, any of us can try to answer some of those additional questions. Turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
You probably have more questions than we do.
We can move all today, though.
Yes.
All right, we'll start here. Council Stefanini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Tremblay. A few questions. First, for anybody listening and part of this discussion, our schools are our priority and always have been. That doesn't mean we have to avoid the real discussions. And I have followed your writings and your discussions back in January about scaling to the losses, and I've had direct conversations with people. And a lot of these positions you're talking about not reappointing, talking to some of your principals, there are no students that go with those teachers, unfortunately. And it's sad that we lose some young, capable teachers. But I have several questions for you. The first is, if you do your 116 and everything you just described, and you meet the budget gap, not including however it is the school committee deals with drama and Mandarin and whatever else the handful of those few positions are, how many people will be getting a notice? How many people will be getting a layoff notice?
It would be 15, it's 14.67 because of the FTEs, but it would be 15 people.
15 people. And also you'd have a handful, how many people are you looking at for bumping rights or people that are going to be displacing somebody else?
So it'd be about 22 positions of transfers, because again, you have 43, if you, again, considering the whole 116, you have
Yes.
43 non-reappointments. So when you have those vacancies, provided the licensure lines up, you could move some of those staff that would be impacted on the cuts into positions, provided that they have a license to do so.
Yes.
So in that end, the transfers would be about 22 people.
Right, and some of those positions, those people will even have maybe too many credentials for that position. So looking at that, are we meeting, if we're looking at this budget, are we meeting all of our legal obligations? We've heard, McKinney-Vento is a problem, and we're not going to meet our legal obligations. Are we meeting our legal obligations with the budget you're talking about?
It's an interesting question. I mean, yes, because there's got to be somebody, like, so you take McKinney-Vento. Now, the school committee would decide, that was a position, for example, that came up on the original 116. That was not voted as a reduction by the school committee at that time, right? So whether the school committee wishes to take that up, if it's additional 35, which is still on the list. That being said, there is an obligation legally, right, for McKinney-Vento. For those who don't know or use these terms, so the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act is the legal definition of students who are unhoused, experiencing homelessness. Unhoused is the term we use, whether they're sleeping at a family member's house or couch hopping or whatever it may be, that's under that definition. We do have a legal obligation to provide coordination for that. Does it have to be a dedicated McKinney-Vento homeless coordinator position? Not necessarily. In fact, the first round of our budget, we had that shifting responsibilities to a central office employee. School committee felt they should have more dedicated attention. So there's still a discussion, but yes, we would have to meet our legal obligations with any of these reductions. The question is, it's going to shift those responsibilities, understandably. So this does do that. I will say that, like the budget with operational side, there's risk involved, right? When we're taking away, for example, if there's positions that we've discussed around our restoration rooms, as just an example, right? So there's like an in-house kind of suspension where we have, the idea is that we know we've had student behaviors. We've been able to, you heard it tonight at the podium, to mitigate a lot of those behaviors by the staffing that we have in place, right? If we want to really do better in our district, if money weren't an issue, we would absolutely preserve the same exact number of staff and then double down on all of our supports. That's what makes sense to do, right? If you had 750 more students, I'd be coming to you saying we need more staff. We have 750 more students. So one could easily argue we have 750 less students, we need less staff. However, if we want to, and I think we all share an interest in improving our outcomes for kids in the district, and I know our teachers are working awfully hard and against the odds in many cases, we could double down. We say double English language support, double our special education support, and then we could really see that return on investment. We are not in a place to spend that kind of money. It's not sustainable. We understand that. And I'm just as concerned about FY28, as has been pointed out by the CFO and others of us have to watch this very carefully. Not the least of which we're going into another round of negotiations with 6 of our bargaining units in the next fiscal year. So to answer your question, yes, we'll meet our legal obligation. Is there going to be an impact of this with some programming? Without a doubt. We've worked to scale this back so that we're not essentially cutting programs, but there's going to be reductions of programming that we're going to do our best to not lose, so that on those less lean years, we can add that back, hopefully, or we find more operational efficiencies. So we know that, and I know this council has spoken before about finding more efficiencies with mergers and what we can do with the city. Those conversations will still for sure continue, because FY28 is not going to be any better.
FY28 is going to be, in '29, are likely going to be worse or the same. So and we have some time to plan for that and go forward. About program reductions, tell us, other than the things we've heard, Mandarin, drama, what are we looking at for risks, and what are we looking at for programs?
So that list of the remaining 35, the programs you named on there are part of that list, right? The school committee has to still deliberate and make a decision on. And again, I think it'll be easier to do that. Not that any of this is easy. I don't mean to say it that way. But if we know we leave the room and we have a general understanding that 3.5 and 10, I'm coming back to that because it's really significant. If that's the general agreement, that we think there's support in the community to do so without going to a referendum. Because if we do go to a referendum, whether that's for next year or not, or for this year, that will play into the timeline factor, in which case it forces us back to the earlier conversation of providing notice to all of our employees, which is going to destroy morale. We lose people. They're all going to be lined up here to speak. We already know how that story ends. So if we can sort of cash in on the fact that we know this is not great and it's hardly desirable, but if we at least have a target that we know we have to hit, and then we have a mechanism to get there, then we can do so. So in terms of programming, and you mentioned Mandarin as an example, should the school committee choose to go in that direction, in that case, for example, we have a vacancy, I don't think that's new news, at the high school. I think we have a position there. There's a transferability. That position is a .8 position, for example. Here's where we can be creative. That position's a .8. I hire back, a .8 would be 4 out of 5 days. You hire back the additional .2, make the position full-time, and then we find some way to still provide the support to our existing 7th or our rising 7th and 8th graders at Walsh, for example, in Mandarin. It would look different, no question. But can we find a way to provide support for our students? Or maybe it's an online programming model, which we know is not ideal. We lived in that COVID world. But there are creative ways we can try to preserve programming. Some of the other reductions, if it impacts our SAGE programming or other kinds of support, we don't want to lose that. But we'd have to scale it back in order to meet this number, if that's still the number. And it goes back to that really important foundational point. If we're building this thing on quicksand, it's going to really be a problem for us. But if we can sort of cash on the 3.5 and the 10, then we have at least a working game plan.
So my final question for you. Assuming that we can increase taxes by 3.5% and we can take the risk of a structural deficit of $10 million, which both are, especially the latter, which is the equivalent of another 4.5% increase in taxes, maybe 5%. And that follows us in the next fiscal year, which is why we say 1 teacher this year is 2 teachers next year and 3 teachers the year after, because that structural deficit continues and we have to fill that hole before we start. How would you describe your confidence in our ability to continue to provide quality education to all of our kids? That's a temperature check.
Yeah.
And I realize you've got a lot of, you've got a little bit of a runny nose and but I'm asking you that question because I think that a lot of the emotions in the community around a lot of this, because of the scaling back and the quantity of teachers, have led to a lot of comments that have incited a level of emotion. Comparing us to Brockton is, on a statistic that's not relevant, is irresponsible. And we've talked about this, which is why I'm asking you, I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm doing so intentionally because I think the parents and students and the leaders of this community should know, how does our leader of our schools feel about their ability to continue to provide a quality education to kids?
I will tell you that our educators have never wavered from their commitment to kids, and everyone's taking on more and more responsibility, and they'll have to. That's what we do. We've done this before. When we had COVID, we had to figure it out. We didn't have a one-to-one technology solution, but we figured it out because that's what we do in education. We're nimble in that way. When people are ascribing a sort of performance metric to the district's underperforming. We're spending this money and it's not turning out. I'm not sure, it depends who you ask, right? Because if you're looking at the averages on an MCAS performance, which we almost nearly as a community said that we don't really care about MCAS performance because it's something the school committee has actually voted saying that's not really of our interest. It's what we do so much more, providing food security for our families, wraparound support for our families, so much more in terms of that access. To a person, if you ask individual students or ask their families, has the Framingham Public Schools supported them? Have they gone on to four-year colleges? Yeah, many of them have. Those individual stories are the narrative. So the hard part is quantifying the metric and what we're using to find agreement on. I've been working with SIFOC, with the school committee as part of my own goals and saying, what are we as the city of Framingham interested in paying attention to? Graduation rate, chronic absenteeism. Our students this year, by our latest count of this, and I'll be reporting this out to the school committee, we have seen an increase of 17% over last year in terms of kids coming to school every day. That's huge, especially when you factor in fears in the community that they may be deported or there's immigration and customs enforcement in their community. That's another separate challenge, but that's real. Why do you think 757 of our families left? Not necessarily entirely because of that, but for sure, we have numbers that tell us how many families have left the country, right? So we have indicators. So what is the measure? Supporting families is a difficult measure to ask, but I say, yes, we will do the very best we can, but I'm not going to sit here and promise that we're going to be fine when I come back at this time and you know, that the cuts didn't matter. We made it work. And if the cuts have to happen because this is the forced play and we want to be cooperative partners with the city, I will tell you that everybody at this table and everybody in our district that's still remaining in their positions will have to work harder and will work harder to help our kids meet that success. How we measure that is going to be the question. And if we can get to a united front on that, another example of collaboration, I think that SIFOC has a real possible function of that. And I've shared out a metric saying, what are the things that we all care about? We all want our kids to graduate from high school. We want our property values to go up in the community because we want to be proud of it. And there's a lot to be proud of, but we focus on a lot of things that we just use to take shots at each other. And that's not productive to our community. So let's find that. I'm not saying we should sugarcoat it. Let's be real about it. And let's have an agreement that this matters to all of us. And it's not this contest back and forth. Can we do it? I'm not sure.
I appreciate your candor in your answer, and I agree with you completely. The year my daughter graduated from college, 2 Framingham High graduates were co-valedictorians of Harvard. We have good students, and we take care of our entire population. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Stefanini. Do you want to go to your side, Madam Chair?
Any questions over here? Anyone like to make any points that have been missed? We'll come back.
We'll go back over here. I don't want to reiterate what Council Stefanini said, but I probably, me and probably Ms. Moshe have the most recent probably high school graduate. All right, and she's still got one, but my daughter got a great education in Framingham. We were strong supporters. We pulled her out of a private, St. Bridget's in 4th grade, put her in public school in 5th grade. I went to Lincoln Elementary, it's gone. I went to Barberry Middle School, it's not a middle school anymore, and I went to Marion, and it's gone. So that was my route in Framingham. I haven't gone too far, 1.25 miles in 62 years. My colleagues have heard that story forever, but I haven't gone too far from where I grew up. And my daughter got a great education, and she wants to be a school teacher, okay? And got into all 9 colleges. So there are different metrics, and I agree. We have a population in Framingham that's very diverse. And you can't always measure it. Some kids don't test well. Some kids aren't in the school system as much as they should be. Maybe they don't attend class, like you said, that's 17%, and they don't test well. But she got into all 9 colleges, and it was her decision. And she got a great education. She, Hemingway for 5th grade, Walsh, which fed to Walsh, and then Framingham High. And I'll sit up here and tell you, I wanted her at Worcester Academy. I'm not going to lie to you. My mother was rolling in the grave because my sister's kids all did the private BS, all right? We're not going to swear these kids in the room, but all the Fay, the St. Mark's, whatever it was, the figure skater went somewhere in Boston. I didn't stay in Framingham so my daughter could go to Fay School, okay? I stayed in Framingham for the diversity. I chose to stay here. I got married late in life, and I wanted to raise my kid in Framingham, where I was raised, okay? And I wanted her in the Framingham Public Schools, and you guys did a good job. She had great teachers, but you hit the nail on the head. We are down 700 plus students, and if we had 700 more, you'd be asking for more money. There's no doubt about it. And the headline isn't the Framingham City Council cut your budget by $8 million. You're getting more money. I know challenges are tough, and we need to make some cuts, but I'll say it again. I have no problem going to the taxpayer, and I know it's kind of late at this stage of the game, and saying, hey, you want to pay 5.5% more? Well, Councilor King brought it up one meeting. You want to, eliminate all this extra excess capacity we have, or do we want to spend it? And then let the people tell us. They just passed in Brookline one of the largest overrides ever. I don't think Ashland's ever done it. They just passed a big override. Our schools are important, but there's nobody on the city council that disagrees with you. I know the school committee always agrees with us too, so I don't want to speak for anybody, but schools are important. Property values are important also, as a woman spoke in the back room. But Framingham property values are strong. And I can speak to that, okay? Our property values in Framingham are strong and off the charts. Because when a rental in Framingham that's affordable, under SMOC standard, is $3,800 or $3,900 a month, that tells you I don't know what's affordable, to be honest with you, okay? Our property values in Framingham are off the charts. But you need a good school system to support those property values. And I think the majority of the council, and I can't speak for the majority, but you've heard from one person that doesn't like to go over 2.5, that said, under these challenging times at our last subcommittee meeting, he could live with the 3.5 and 10 million. I can live with it. I'm not happy, but it's time to figure it out and at least not let. I don't think we need to let any more people than already I always had the 81 number, then you added the other 35. I don't think we need to make anybody else's life any more disruptive than they already are, okay? So I can commit to 3.5 and 10 million as a vote from me to support the mayor's budget. But we all have to do a little more with less, and that's just me. So, but I can support that, and you'll probably hear from some other cities councilors, and I would believe the majority of the city council could vote for that, but I'm only one person. Because the mayor listened to us. Because he first came in with a number that just wasn't gonna work. But at that time, when we talked about going out to the voters, if the voters said, yeah, we wanna do this, we wanna spend the excess capacity, I got no problem doing that. I got no problem writing a bigger check, okay? And that's my thoughts. Do you have somebody?
Yep, over here. We're going to go with Kyle next.
Sure. On the question of the 3.5 and 10, which is the numbers that keep going around, we just heard a presentation from the superintendent where he discussed, all of the goals and objectives that have been set for the school system that they've been talked about in the school committee, the district, all of the knowledge they have in house that have worked with the community to come up with these intended outcomes for the school district, and they worked backwards to figure out what they actually have to do to get to that. So you start with the goal, and you work your way backwards to what you need to do to deliver the goal. And it feels like this 3.5 and 10, we sort of started with a constraint. We're not starting with what do we want this community to look like? What do we want to be able to do for our schools? We started with, instead of starting with a goal and figuring out what we have to do, we started with constraint and figuring out what we can't.
Makes sense.
That's the question, I guess, is a statement, but the question is, did that number come from some sort of budgeting exercise, or was that an input to the budgeting exercise?
Well, you want to be my guest? Councilor Stephanie.
So, beginning of this year, while you were looking at the superintendent's list of 116, the council was looking at revenue estimates from the state, federal, local sources. And the council voted 11-0 to ask the mayor to do 3.5% increase before any of the numbers that were associated with the budget, and $7.5 million in free cash. Our free cash has gone from $2 or $3 or $4 million over the last few years to last year was $10 million. And for those who don't know, that's a structural deficit. That's taking your savings account to live large, and then all of a sudden, there's no money that is in your savings account.
Next year.
And we need to, our schools, our police, our fire need to have a consistent level of revenue. And so it doesn't help us to have an increase one year and a decrease the next year and an increase the next year. We need to figure out how do we level that off. That's our attempt at looking at revenues with the mayor as to how we, over a long time period of time, can figure out how we increase taxes and wean ourselves off of a structural deficit, which is a cliff to come. There isn't anybody who disagrees with that. Every budget you run into, it's the structural deficit that ultimately catches up to you and that we all have to figure out how to deal with. I don't know if that answers your question, Kyle, but there was that ongoing dialogue. Ideally, we would do it exactly as you described, which is why we've been pushing for strategic planning, oversight, so that we look at what do we want to do. We sort of do a little bit of both, and that's sort of the way we've budgeted. We shouldn't do it that way. We should have a strategic plan, and we should look at where we want. The school's strategic plan, I think, is pretty clear, and I think you're close to achieving where you want to be.
We haven't had one till now, hopefully with our new CFO.
Kyle, yeah, follow up, go ahead.
So 1 percentage point on property tax increase for the average homeowner, because I think, we hear these numbers going around. I have 2 children. One is very inquisitive and the other is very into Disney princess songs. So I'm often answering rapid fire multiplication questions while getting Let It Go sung in the other ear, which is a difficult mental exercise. But for the average person who, a lot of parents live like that here, they hear this 3.5, 4.5. How much for the typical homeowner? How much is that per year in property taxes? One percentage point increase.
Mr. CFO.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. So 1% is approximate on the average single-family home in the city is approximately $80. Is an $80 increase, but we have to keep that in context with the fact that that's based on current values as we have, not the whatever values the change in assessment will be. But as of today, it's about $80 for every 1% in the levy.
Can I ask another follow-up? If we went from 3.5 to 4.5, how much additional revenue is that? Like, how much is a percentage point in revenue?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the additional 1% is about $2.3 million.
Thank you.
We have one over here, but do you have anyone that wants to ask a question first?
Stephanie?
I would just add to that, the important piece to remember in this is not just the 3.5%. You have to assume that the $10 million is also a tax increase. Because once the revenue is gone, it has to be backfilled, so that's equivalent to 4.5% tax increase. So the tax increase we're looking at this year is 8%. So if you want to look apples to apples, you need to look at, the budget is looking at essentially backstopped by our real estate taxes, which is our last payer, about 8%. And so if you're looking at next year, we're going to have an increase because our budget is going to climb. And how many years in a row can you have an 8% increase? And the most important year in a fiscal decline is the first year, because 1 teacher is 2 is 3.
Councilor King.
Just out of turn, I don't like to talk out of turn.
You can talk.
I think it's a good question. And I appreciate the question, and I don't disagree with your fundamental concept, at least as I understand it, about trying to understand what we need and then how to pay for it versus understanding how much we want to pay. I mean, that's fundamentally what you said, I think. The problem we have, I think, is how we got ourselves here, is we kind of did that in previous years the other way. We had this much, so why don't we spend it, as opposed to like really looking at what we needed to spend. We had enough, everybody was happy, so we spent whatever we had. And I've said this many times, so I don't want to repeat myself, but counterintuitively, during the COVID era, we've had more money in this system than I've ever seen in my many years involved in the system. So money was, was plentiful. I mean, it was. It's the only way to put it. So now it's not plentiful for a host of different reasons, normal cyclical things, some political things, some economic things. So here we are, and how do we do it? So I think what I suspect that the chairman, when he made his comment a little while ago about a person who normally doesn't like to go over 2.5%, indicated he was generally okay with 3.5 and 10, was referring to me. But it's not that we can go from I've said this before too. We can go from 2.5 to 10%, okay? And that's not going to cause me to move out of the city. I might not love it, but I can pay that bill, and I'm not going to. And I think that's the case for most of my colleagues up here. Other people may have more trouble doing that, and I think we have to be respectful of that. So if we decide So I think the reason I said about the 3.5 and 10 is I think we got ourselves in a bad situation for the reasons I said before, frankly, namely that money was plentiful and we didn't really watch where we were spending it. The advantage that has is I do believe there are areas we can cut that will not impact the things we don't want to impact, namely kids in their classrooms and that type of thing. You know, I don't want to tell war stories, but I was a school administrator for 10 years, not in Framingham. And back in 2008, when we had all those problems, you know, we had to cut our budget at zero. And since we had done pretty good for the years before that, we were able to do it, and we could deliver all our services to our kids. So I think this year, I think 3.5 and 10, again, I don't love it for the reasons John said about the 10. I think the 10 is way too high, but I don't think we have much of a choice. So I am generally okay with 3.5 and 10 for this year with a couple of understandings, namely that we try to make whatever reductions we make, and I think the mayor did a good job tonight with him, and I don't know as much about the details of the school reductions, but just because I haven't followed it, you know, detail position to position. But I think if we can do that and deliver our services pretty equally to what we've been doing, then we have to look at what do we do after that for the most difficult year. And if we want to look at FY28 and talk about the, I don't want to say perfect system, but what we want to do, I think we should do that. But that's when I think we should put it out to a referendum. It's not reasonable to put it out to a referendum this year because it's just too late at this point. But next year it would be. And people have to decide, what do they want to do? And we have to get an input. I don't think we can make that those decisions here year after year as elected officials. I mean, somebody that may still not be here said, you know, raise our taxes for schools. That may be fine, but we have to see if that's what the community wants. We can't just make that decision based on the relatively few number of people all of us are exposed to. I mean, I appreciate everybody coming out here tonight, and I give you a lot of credit for coming out here on a beautiful evening to sit down in this windowless room with your kids. I'm actually surprised there are not more people here. I've seen people in these things in the past where people are out the door, you know? So I'm not sure it matters, though, because I think your message gets through either way, okay? I don't think it matters. But if we're going to make these broad-based decisions, I think we should do that. But we have to get that input. So I think we need to come to an agreement this year, which I think we're, you know, there may be some changes in the details, but I think we're pretty close to. Now, as far as what the outside parameters are, get us through this year without really hurting anybody, so to speak, maybe making some people uncomfortable, but not hurting anybody. But then next year, because I do agree it's going to be worse, we really got to figure out what we're going to do. And we're going to figure out whether people are willing to spend the money here. And if they are, that tells us fine. And if they're not, that tells other people other things, I guess. And, you know, I have been impressed over the years of how we've been able to do it through good times and bad times. And I believe we can continue to do that. And I have confidence that the school administration can figure, I mean, you know, you guys are asking us, Bob, whether generally we think 3.5 and 10 is where we're willing to go. And as Phil said, I don't think we've said that for sure because we haven't had a vote. It's not fair. I think some people, but I think you're probably hearing that looks reasonably like it could happen. But what I'm hearing for that, too, is you're saying to us, even though I understand the school committee hasn't voted it yet, that you can make 3.5 and 10 work, too, at the numbers that they are now. That's what I'm hearing from you, and I think that's the type of collaboration. And if that's the case, you know, I think we should understand no one loves it, but go forward around there and then figure out immediately what we're going to do after that. Thank you.
So just to clarify one little point of that, I know there was a lot said, you are for 3.5 and 10.
I mean, I still want to see some stuff, but I generally think
For
that,
this year.
Yeah, I said that last meeting. That's why Phil was quoting me earlier when he was the person he was talking about. I said that at the last meeting.
We have Jen over here is just dying to talk, so I'm going to turn it over to her if that's okay.
Yeah, right.
I just have a question. So the mayor submitted something last Thursday, Friday, the memorandum. We as a school committee have not received that. Bob and Lincoln, I don't know if you guys have received that. We haven't, so it'd be nice to know what the school committee number is, or the district number that you proposed was or is, with the 3.5% and the 10 million?
Yeah, I do have the school number, and just correct me if I'm wrong. It's 187-218-448. It's a $4.1 million increase, or 2.24% over this year's budget, FY26.
Thanks, Link.
Welcome.
And I just have, based on something that Dr. Tremblay said, the mayors tonight came up with some creative ideas, about, merging departments and things. This, God bless you.
Thank you.
I've been up here 7 years, and in all fairness, I heard it from the prior administration, and the mayor, and I'm a strong supporter of the mayor, and I've heard it from you folks. We need to figure it out. There's got to be some consolidation. We need to figure out something that can work on the school and the city side. You had Matt Tortai, he made magic happen, okay? Now you have Jimmy Duane, another great guy. We got Jimmy Paolini. I'm not gonna get into it too much, but when I see a guy that's a licensed plumber cutting the lawn, there's a problem with that situation, okay? We need to figure out how, if you got a plumber that's not working at the schools and we got a leaky toilet over here, he can come over here and fix it. There are ways. We might not save a lot of money, but I truly believe it'll be a lot more efficient for both your side and their side. And for whatever reason, the perception, which is greater than reality, and everybody in this room knows that too, that line, it's like almost like the schools don't want to see some of these things consolidated. So if we're all willing to work together and do things together and do things, it's something we need to take a serious hard look at as soon as we get this stuff finalized the next day. I don't want to be sitting back here next year, because we're all going to be back here next year. At least we got another year left on our terms. And we might as well get proactive and think about what we can do. You know what I mean? So all of a sudden, we need an electrician over here. Your guy's not busy. He comes over to City Hall and fixes a building. And, poor Jimmy Paolini, he goes around with duct tape and keeps it all stuck together. I don't know how he does it, okay? I go by this 188 Concord Street, I want to puke every time I walk by it, okay? Because I owned that building at one time, or so we'll say my mother owned it with Dennis Cardiff, okay? And the city could have bought it way back when. They didn't want to buy it, or not the schools, the city, because, guess why? The only reason they didn't buy it was because who owned it, okay? We all might as well lay it out why it was. And then they paid $1 million more later, so that's okay too. The guy that bought it from us, he made another $1 million. But it's something, you got to think a little bit out of the box, and consolidating some services would be a good thing, okay? And he really is thinking out today. And I can't sit up here and criticize him. Okay, maybe we're not perfectly happy with some of his suggestions tonight, but at least he made some. Okay, we haven't heard him. Tonight he's talking about it. And, Mr. Blummer said in the audience, we need to know what that $3.5 million number looks like. We need to, or whatever that number is. And we don't know if we were at 3.5 or 10. You guys don't know that. The last thing I want to see you do is send out pink slips to 45% of the people that work for you, or that are in whatever that, what is it, in the union, or however it is, or people part of your team. And why would they want to stay? Okay, believe me, the morale in this building's awful too. Don't kid yourself. So we need to let people at least know we appreciate what they do and that we appreciate them. And that's half of the battle. So if we could really take a good look at that down the road, as soon as this budget gets figured out, and it's not going to be perfect, but consolidating some services. Like I said to him the other day, just tell us something so we know that you're doing it. And he is. He's trying. And it's not easy, because the phones are ringing off the hook and people are really upset and frustrated. And, and to Kyle's point, a 1% isn't a lot of money. Okay, it's $80. But when you multiply it by everybody, and then you look at the 10 million over here, we're going to run out of 10 millions, okay? The 10 million isn't going to, it doesn't get replenished every single year, and we need economic development in this city. And not everybody wants to talk about that either, because, God forbid you talk about it on one side of Route 9, you can't talk about it. But on one side, build anything you want, tax them whatever you want, and it's okay. But as soon as you cross Route 9, all bets are off. So we all need to take a hard look at how we need revenue. You get revenues by economic development. Marlboro's cleaning our clock, and I compared us to Marlboro before. Natick cleans our clock too, and they're only a town. But we need to figure out how we can generate more revenue, as Council Stefanini said earlier. Because without revenues, you guys came in looking for 15 million on day one. We got 9 million in new revenue. How does it work? It doesn't work, okay? So we all need to find ways to attract people to come to Framingham and want to be here. We've got some of the best world headquarters in the world out here in Framingham. We need more. And that's hopefully what our EDC can do now with Mr. Sarkisian. So that's my spiel.
Mr. Lewis sorry, go ahead.
Yep. No, I'm done.
Mr. Lewis has his hand up. Go ahead, Brent.
December 30th, when we were all in this room, feels like a really long time ago. And I hope that as we move forward both in getting some clarity on this budget so that we can make the hard decisions that we need to, and as we look forward to the next fiscal year, that we will continue to have these conversations. 80% of our expenses are personnel. They're driven mostly by bargaining agreements. So I am hopeful that we can have conversations like this earlier next year so that we can go to the voters and give them clear choices, because some of the choices are just being made known over these last few weeks. As a resident of Framingham, my role on this committee is to advocate for our students and schools. As a parent, I would do the same, but I don't want to see our fireworks go away. Some of the other cuts are just really hard as a resident, and things that I think are worth investing in. So process next year, I hope we can delve into this a little better. I know it was a perfect storm with a hard financial year, not having a CFO, but we really need to do better so that we can have this process in a more transparent way where more folks can weigh in. The other piece, and the budget really is in the city council's hands at this point, but I am curious what 3.5 and 10 million are nice round numbers, but what does 3.6 get us? I know that makes the process a lot harder and it drags it out longer, which I don't want for our school side and our employees of the cities and schools who are waiting. But it's a nuanced conversation. I think focusing on round numbers is easy to talk about rhetorically, but I think there are trade-offs, and I think we can weigh those responsibly.
Yes, before I call on you two. Mr. CFO, Brian, the 4.5 and the 14 million, your first proposal would have paid for everything, right? Isn't that what it was? 4.5 and 14 or 15 million, and the free cash would have been gone, in my opinion. Wasn't that the original number that the mayor came in with?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the original 4.5 and 14 million would not have paid for everything. It still had a recommended reduction to the public school systems budget that was approved by the committee of $2 million. So it would not have solved all of the issues that are kind of cropping up through this budget process.
Councilor Stephanie, then Councilor Cannon.
I appreciate your thought, and you're right, they are random numbers, but I would ask you to focus more on the 10 million and less on the 3.5. Because that 3.5 is really 8. And so the real question and the real risk in this budget is that 10 million. The 3.5 million's coming, the 3.5%'s coming in. And so if you understand the risk associated with that and the need for our fiscal stability, this year becomes our baseline budget. So every teacher you decide is necessary this year is 2 teachers next year. So if our budget takes a dip next year, you've got to find 2 people next year for the 1 you found this year.
Excuse me? Do you want to take the mic instead of chirping from the back? You're more than welcome to take the microphone.
Sure, can I speak?
I'll recognize you I'll recognize you. Let me just finish up here. Are you good on your side for the time being? Well, Mr. Lewis has his hand up.
And I would just point out that that math and that information to the voters earlier on in a process where they have input would be really valuable. I'm not quite sure. I know we had presentations about what the 2.5, 3.5, 4.5 looked like, but I don't think we had the other math added in. Okay. The more transparent we can be, the better, and I know you all agree.
Councilor Cannon, before I go to the audience.
You can go to the member of the public first. I don't mind. You can go to the member of the public first. I don't mind waiting.
You sure? Oh,
of course.
Ms. Maskell. If he raises his hand, I'll recognize him. Well, I should, might as well, right? Is it 2 or 3 minutes? We'll give it, just so I said the right thing.
First of all, that's not necessarily true, that for everyone will be 2 next year. That's a bunch of.
Right. I'm gonna, you got 3 minutes, Ms.
But-
Maskell, and just
So
can you
I have 3
identify
minutes.
yourself?
So my name is Tiffany Maskell, former school committee member for 8 years, a parent and the PTO vice president at Walsh Middle School. It's the responsibility of every leader in this city to help educate and support our youngest residents. That responsibility does not disappear when budget becomes difficult. I understand there are real financial pressures right now, but students did not create inflation. They did not create rising healthcare costs or years of bad financial planning and decisions by this government. And the failure to create new revenue for the city, they did not have anything to do with. Yet they are the ones that are being asked to carry this burden. The school committee and district already eliminated 81 educator positions and cut $4.8 million after months of painful review. Those aren't just numbers. They are trusted adults, programs, supports, and relationships that help students feel safe, supported, and feel like they belong in school. And now we're discussing even deeper cuts. If we truly want to build a Southside school, like every one of you voted, and invest in the future of our community, how can we justify cutting the equivalent of the entire staff of our largest middle school? That sends the wrong message to students, families, and educators about what we value. Many of the adults in this room making these decisions benefited from strong public schools themselves. Many raised children in the district, as we heard. Our students deserve the same opportunities, safety, support, and a sense of belonging that the previous generations received. It's not their fault that we're in this situation. At the same point, these cuts stop being efficiencies and start impacting the stability and quality of education our students receive every day. Please stop asking students and educators to absorb more instability and fully examine every opportunity and option available before making deeper cuts to our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maskell. Council Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like a lot of what I've heard this evening. I thank Mr. Shepherd for his very thoughtful question. I think sometimes it's important that we spend some time talking about that. And I agree with Mr. Lewis that, so much of this spending is driven by CBAs that were, in many cases, decisions that were made years and years ago. So we have to be very conscious in the moment of that kind of forecasting. And I agree in many ways with what Ms. Maskell said. And I think the spirit of what I've been hearing from everybody that I've worked with since being elected when we first became a city is, are we doing everything we can to avoid some of the circumstances that I've heard about tonight? Have we meaningfully made those consolidations to make sure that we've got one team of people cutting grass or taking care of a leak or, some of the financial behind the scenes stuff long before we ever talk about programs or teachers or folks that I could name off the top of my head that made a difference to me when I was a kid, having one experience in first grade, that we can all go around those rooms. We can all go around the room and think of those people. So that's the spirit of what I keep hearing. And, it's disappointing sometimes when, as elected officials, we sort of, everything we do by nature is politicized. But I think a lot of people would walk out of the room tonight, or have certainly walked in thinking that, putting aside 750, I didn't realize that the number had gotten that big. That's a massive number. And when you take away the transfers in some, I'm counting like maybe a little more than a dozen really painful actual positions. Not minimizing the importance and that at all, but whether it's 6 or 12 or 15, I was trying to do the math on the fly, but it's a lot different than 18 or the 100 and something. The mayor made some really courageous announcements tonight, and we're all, of course, going to have thoughtful discussions about those details as they come along. But I was really hoping, because you've been asked, Dr. Tremblay, year after year after year about, well, what about combining some responsibilities? And some will make sense and some won't. But, for years, it was that Charlie Brown with the football. We'll do it next year. We'll do it. It was, well, we'll talk to the school department would point at the city, and the city would point at the school department. I didn't hear anything about that tonight. I heard it from the mayor, and I applaud him, and we'll figure out all of those details as time goes on, and none of those things are easy, and knowing the mayor as I do and have for the number of years that I have, I know they were very painful decisions to make. Maybe some long-term really good things will happen for the community because of those difficult decisions. I didn't hear that from you, especially since we've so directly talked about combining some responsibilities where they make sense to avoid some of the catastrophic scenarios that have been discussed by parents and teachers and by so many of us. I'm disappointed by that. I'd also be remiss, I got a number of questions. I was out of town, and it's never a good thing when I'm out of town and I hear someone asking me a question about Framingham who doesn't know that I'm, in the weeds on this kind of stuff. Oh, you're from Boston. Is that where they were giving out the bonuses for persons based on their race? I'm stunned that I haven't heard more about those stipends from the administration. You were very responsive to me when I reached out to you after I first heard about it, and I appreciate that, but it rattled a lot of confidence when we were basically paying someone differently contractually because of the color of their skin. And I'd be remiss if we didn't give you the opportunity to talk about that, and certainly anything else you want to share about, comment on else that I brought up. But paying somebody because of the color of their skin, more or less, is just so fundamentally un-American, and I'm troubled that it didn't come up in the course of your discussion, bless you, this evening.
Do you want to address that?
And then I'll have a follow-up.
I'm not going to comment on the details of that, just tell you that we've pulled back that stipend. So it doesn't exist any longer at the end of this year, it sunsets. And with respect to merging of departments, as we discussed before, there's a charter provision that allows for the executive branch to make those recommendations. It wouldn't be my place to suggest that Parks and Rec and DPW to the mayor's departments that they consolidate under the schools. Of course, I'll work together with the mayor and the CFO, COO. We've discussed this before. We brought forward capital that wasn't sufficient. I think we should reevaluate the capital as an area for us to look at. Yeah, we'll have those conversations, and that's all I have for comment.
My follow-up, and I'll comment on where we go from here, is it's a pretty cowardly answer, Dr. Tremblay, because for years you've just given us lip service about making sure that we were doing everything we could, whether it's IT or payroll, or I'm just picking the things that don't impact the service, the things that we want to squeeze every dollar out of, so we don't have to worry about a teacher in a child's experience, the things that aren't student-facing. And now we're back to the finger pointing, and I can go down. I started taking notes of the dates and times when, yes, we'll have those conversations. Based on the mayor's comments this evening, there seems to be a renewed appetite to have those discussions, so perhaps it would be wise to re-engage there. The capital idea just didn't save money. The point was to reduce the cost of operating the government so we cannot worry about having enough money left over for schools. In terms of the budget, where we go from here, I think that the number that's been talked about tonight, I think it passes. I think it passes mostly because every single year, without exception, unequivocally, and I believe unanimously, the City Council has fully funded the request that's come to the school from the school department. We have absolutely, without exception, funded the entirety of our. So I think whatever you ask for, you get, and part of that is because we're not deep in the weeds. We get an up or down vote on it, and that's going to happen. And I think that's. I'm really worried about next year, because when I talk to people who have governed. They're young and spry, don't get me wrong, but there are two people in the room that have governed during really extended periods of economic decline that have hurt municipalities, Councilor King and Councilor Stefanini. I trust their experience and their judgment there, and I don't think we are grasping what is ahead, because it seems to be like we do every year. All right, we can just get to, we're going to go in with a crazy high number, but here's the number we really want to get to, and we'll get here and they'll vote for it. And then all bets are off, and we'll get to next year. And that's kind of what I feel, and I really worry about it. I think it happens. I think you get the number you're asking for. I'm disappointed that you won't comment more on the race. You sent me the contracts. I appreciate it. I imagine that they're public record. I question your judgment as a superintendent signing a document that says you get a bonus, a stipend, because of the color of your skin. And that's in essence what they did, what you did. So once it became a national outcry, you pulled back on it. I mean, of course, you have to. I question the legality of it. But what is unforgivable is that I don't know the administrators that are involved. Maybe I've met them. I don't know them. But they're probably really capable. But because you put that bonus on them, that's what they're defined by. And that's so unfair. So I hope we'll have the opportunity to talk more about that. I hope we'll have the opportunity in the future to talk more about stipends and travel and so many of the other things. But I hope there'll be some meaningful collaboration on, there are some things that the school department does that are outside of the classroom that you do really, really well that maybe we could use some help with on the city side and vice versa. And in the course of that meaningful collaboration, we can maximize in-classroom dollars by saving some money behind the scenes. So that's where I'll leave it, Mr. Chairman. And thank you all for being at the meeting this evening.
Madam Chair, and then I'll go back out to the audience.
I don't want to make an assumption, but I think what I gathered from just a little piece of that was that you're for 3.5 and 10.
No, I think your budgeting is irresponsible, and this is the byproduct of years and years of the school committee. I'm answering your question, ma'am. The school committee has done, I think the superintendent has done the best.
It's just a yes or no. It's not
a
an
yes or
open
no.
response question.
I listened to
Just
five.
clarifying
I'm
point. I
clarifying.
do have the floor. It's just a yes or no. I was just wondering if I extracted that out correctly, yes or no.
Respectfully, ma'am, you asked me a question, and I'm happy to answer it. And the way I'll answer it is as follows. I think the number passes, which is what I said. I think that that number is a byproduct of the most brilliant politician in our community, save for perhaps Jack Lewis, doing a great job of befriending many members of the school committee over the years. And the school committee is as a body, doesn't seem to like or hasn't over the years in asking tough questions as a body, supportively, broadly. And that lack of accountability has turned into a very expensive operation that has not yielded the academic performance that I think the community is counting on. And I think that's put you in the position that you're in now.
All right, so
Do I think it passes? I do.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Do I think that number passes? Yes, I do.
Okay, so I was confusing. I think it passes with, I'm in support of that. I thank you for your clarification.
That's why I wanted to give you more than a yes or no.
What?
That's why I wanted to give you more than a yes or no.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you please walk us through the next steps and timeline of this process?
I don't think we know the answer to that question yet. I mean, we're going to have to see how we work out this week.
The next 3 nights.
I mean, in my best case scenario, we put the first reading on next week at the city council, but I don't know if we'll get there. I think we have to see what happens tonight. We have a meeting tomorrow night and Thursday night where we're going to delve into these budgets. This is our very first, as you know, you wanted to meet tonight, which was fine.
We have another Wednesday meeting next week, so.
I know, but we accommodated you guys tonight, which is
Appreciate that.
happy to do, but you have to understand by doing that, we're at the very, very beginning of our discussion as opposed to at the end of our discussion.
Gotcha. I'm going to yield the rest of my time because I know Kyle has a question, so I won't ask my next one. Go ahead, Kyle.
My question is for Councilor Cannon, and this is, I know people want to see people get dunked on. This is not a dunk on you question. This is a legitimate, I want to understand. I understand your opposition to the stipend, which no longer exists for diversity in our administration. Given what is known in education about when you have a diverse student body, the diversity in school leadership actually has marked improvements in student outcomes. Are you opposed to the objective, the goal of getting to a more diverse leadership in schools, or only the mechanism?
So I think that's a thoughtful question, Mr. Shepherd, and I appreciate it. I think I would answer the question this way. If we all think about the teachers that made the most long-term lasting impact on us, the people that we think of that are off the top of, when I was in first grade and Mrs. Fellman taught me that great word quadrilateral, and I felt like the biggest kid in the world because I was in first grade and knew that a fancy word for square was quadrilateral. Or, and I could go down the list, it's a whole other meeting, but when we all think of those people, we'll probably think of traits and characteristics of all of those people, or as employees, when we think of the managers, because this is about an administrative role, when we think of the folks that have mentored us most effectively, we will think of characteristics, traits, experiences, credentials, things that would be, if we listed their top 10 items, we would probably think of things, I would imagine we would, that come up first long before the color of their skin. And this was, and I thought when I heard about this, it was a very politically charged description of the language in the contract. So I asked Dr. Tremblay to send me the contract. And what I was hearing was very accurate. It was basically, we're paying somebody more, not because they have a certain life experience, not because they have training in a certain area. And there are stipends like that and performance compensation metrics involved in all of that. But among that, overshadowing all of that because of our history in this country was we were paying more for someone or less. We were impacting compensation because of the color of somebody's skin. And not only is that so un-American and I believe illegal, but it's so anti-Framingham. Framingham has always been a place where the good idea comes from anybody. Everything is merit-based. We do what we can. We empower people based on skill and achievement. That's what I would do. So it's a longer answer than I think you anticipated, but I've thought about this very meaningfully since it came about because I've been so uncomfortable with it. And I think it's something we should probably talk more about, and I'm happy to chat further anytime. And I thank the co-chairs for their time answering a very thoughtful question.
Mr. Would you like a follow-up?
Sorry, a quick follow-up. I mean, the simple like yes, no is the goal of a more diverse leadership a valid goal in your opinion?
I think when we strive to answer really complicated questions that affect the lives, not just the in-the-moment life, but the lives of our children boil down to a yes, no, I don't think that's helpful to anybody. So if the answer to the way I answer the question wasn't as helpful to you as I had hoped, I'm happy to talk further about it anytime. You can reach out. My cell phone number is widely available, and I can give it to you.
Can I follow up one more time? I mean, I think I agree with your characterization of how we would think about the the teacher administrator who really changed our lives among this group because we are all white people here, right? And I know that but seriously, I mean, I have heard people who are people of color say, the person that inspired me let me know that people who look like me can do more than my parents were able to do. And so that's really the question about that as a goal, because it is the case that for minority students, there is an achievement improvement because they see people like them in positions of authority and respect where they may not have seen that in other places.
And I'm happy to continue this as long as you want. I'm not hiding from your question, but in an effort to be, I think when we boil someone down, because that person that made such the difference that because we've heard the same things as well. When we boil them down to a color on a chart, and that's among the benchmarks and metrics for their compensation, we have failed. So either racism is good or it's bad. It can't be some racism is good as some racism is bad. We can't hire people and compensate them differently because of the color of their skin, and that's what that was. And so, but it's a thoughtful conversation. I wouldn't assume that all of the people up here, I wouldn't assume the identities that they have ethnically or racially, but I think it's an enormous privilege that you and I have the opportunity to talk about this as elected officials, probably from a similar background. But I think fundamentally, I won't waver from the fact that paying somebody for the color of their skin, more or less, is fundamentally wrong. There is so much more to that individual, and we should not let the color of their skin be a part of how we are compensating them. They are defined by so much more than the color of their skin. And that's what should be focused on.
All right,
Final comment, Kyle, on this, and then we're going to move on.
We said we weren't going to go back and forth, and this has gone back and forth long enough. So we're going to go out to the audience. There's people that have their hands up. First-time speakers, these hands were up first. I'm going to go, Mr. Maskell, Drayden, you're up next. And then it's going to be Mr. Epstein, then it's going to be Ms. Guernsey, and then the woman that already spoke. And then, this has been a productive evening, so before we get off the tracks, we're going to wrap this up.
Good evening. My name is Drayden. I'm a student in Framingham Public Schools. We know budgets are complicated, and we know money is tight right now, but we didn't cause inflation. We didn't choose higher costs, and we can't control what's happening in the country or the economy. Most of us can't even vote yet, but we're the ones being affected the most. A lot of the adults in this room went to Framingham schools. Some of your own kids went through the system too, and you know how important good schools are and what they do for kids in the community. So why should we get less? Our schools already lost 81 educator positions and millions of dollars in cuts. To us, those aren't just numbers. Those are teachers we trust, programs we care about, and adults who help us feel safe, supported, and like we belong in school. When budgets keep getting tighter, we notice classes get bigger, programs disappear, students who need help have fewer people to go to. School stops feeling as connected and supportive as it should. And honestly, we shouldn't have to carry the burden for years of financial problems or failed planning in city government. We deserve the same opportunities, support, and sense of belonging that students in Framingham had before us. Please stop asking schools and students to absorb more cuts. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Epstein, you're next.
Okay, Jeff Epstein, 8 Stalker Lane. I have some experience with cuts. I've served 10 years on school committees, 6 in Newton and 4 here. And I started on the Newton School Committee in 2008. So I know about cuts, and I know how they're done, and I know the kind of conversation you have to achieve that. And I didn't see that conversation occurring just now between Mike Cannon and the superintendent. I don't think anyone deserves to be called a coward in a meeting, and I think that we got to get past that.
Point of order. Mr. Cannon did not call anybody a coward or any name. It was a characterization of an answer, and that's an opinion.
Play the tape back. Okay, well,
Play the
whatever.
tape back. That's
Can
a good
I move
idea.
on? Can I move on?
Yes.
I think that's the kind of conversation we don't want to have. So I'd like to stick to the facts here, and certainly there have been some halcyon days in Framingham. And I'm sure when people are going into college now or are graduating now, it's the 12th grade is where they are. But they started out in kindergarten. And so the question that should be asked is not how great we were with the people who are graduating now and how they got into Harvard or something, but ask the school committee where 3rd grade reading proficiency is heading. Because over the last 4 years, it's been heading down. And what you do is you learn to read, and the idea is to get people to read by 3rd grade, and then after that, you read to learn. So you got to look where the problem is. It's not in the high school or the middle school, it's in the early years. Ask the school committee and the superintendent where 3rd grade reading proficiency is. That's very important. The other thing is consolidations. So you take 2 departments, 2 directors, you merge them and you save 1 director position, which is $100,000. We have $10 million problem. So consolidations is never going to solve anything. The other thing is when you're looking at positions and say 80 positions, how many people actually got pink slipped there? And you feel good if it was just 20. But the fact is you lost 80 positions. So you should think about students. If you're thinking about teachers and living people teaching, yes, you should worry who's going to get cut. But the fact is whether the vacancy was done by cutting a person or whether it simply wasn't filled, that student doesn't have the support in the classroom. So 80 positions means classroom support is declining. The final point, we have a $10 million free cash problem. We have a recurring income problem here. And it's no surprise because for 4 years, when I started on the school committee, we had 0% tax increase for 4 years. We lost $40 million in city revenue, okay? We can fix our recurring revenue problem right now 2 ways, it seems to me. 10 million, 2.3 is 1% on the tax rate. There's a 4% tax increase has to happen somewhere to wipe that out. But the other thing is the pension liability, which people don't seem to want to hear about, but dozens and dozens of communities do it. And if you move out the pension liability payoff date from 2030 to 2040, which you can do, you release about $20 million a year in recurring income. So you should think of tapping into that. So we don't want big tax increases, but think of something that would be a combination of both. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Epstein. Ms. Guernsey?
Hi, everyone. Sarah Guernsey, District 2, teacher at Walsh, and Unit A chair for the FTA. So, and I promise I'll be quick. So I heard Ms. Barnhill ask, what's the timeline? And I missed the answer. Maybe it's the math teacher in me who used to be an elementary teacher, but today is May 26th. In 5 days, teachers have to be notified that they will be changing positions. And in 20 days, teachers have to be notified that they will no longer be here. So I just, some great conversations happened, but time's a ticking. So I just want to know what's the timeline, because I have colleagues coming to me some of them wondering what's happened, and then other ones I have conversations and I say, oh, Miami, you don't know what's coming. So I would just love to get back to the timeline question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guernsey. Well, we're meeting tonight, tomorrow, and Thursday, and our next city council meeting is until June 2nd, correct? So that's June 2nd? Yeah, so June 2nd is when we'll do the first vote on the budget. Is that correct, Councilor King?
I mean, I would hope so. We're scheduled for a public hearing that night. I mean, that's pretty close to it's right on our original schedule. So, I mean, this talk about the schedule, I think, is a little overstated, but, and the deadlines, only because no other year, there's been years we passed it as late as late June. So I do think it's a little overstated about the schedule, but I hope that we have the first reading next Tuesday night. We'll see if we get there.
And I think what you've heard from councils different things. We haven't heard from a couple folks. But I think, in Councilor Cannon, I think summed it up best. He thinks the 3.5 and 10 is going to pass. He's not going to probably vote for it, or he's not going to vote for it, he said. But he said, no, I know, well, that's the.
I didn't say anything. There's more to learn, but I hear you.
Right, there's more to learn. But I would think, you guys all teach for a living out there, right? I used to learn a long time when I got into politics, all you had to learn how to do was count, okay? So I would say that the 3.5 and 10 is realistic, and it's going to happen, in my opinion. And I'm only one person, but I'm supporting that. So, and I was supportive of some other different options, but we didn't get there. So we'll see how it plays out, but that's just me. So that woman in the back, you raised your hand also to speak again. 2 minutes, please.
I don't know if this is the right place to ask this question, but as the superintendent stated earlier, the contract that the city of Framingham has with the teachers union requires decisions to be made by June 1st and then June 15th. So if you're not moving on this budget until after one of those deadline passes, what kind of ramifications does that have for the teachers in the school, in the budget, and making sure that the superintendent and other central office personnel can notify educators about what's happening?
Never moved on it before those dates. Never, since we've been a city. Never moved on it.
Well, you didn't have a money problem.
Right, but I think the
Well,
superintendent
I think
said it
what
best. It's a
Phil's-
gamble. It's a gamble, all right? But I think he knows now, based on what he heard tonight from a few of us, and if people know how to count, I think he's comfortable thinking that he's going to get his 3.5 and 10, that he doesn't have to notify 45% of his district that they're going to get pink slips. I think that's the message.
Right, but the movement of people is going to happen. So, because there's going to be budget cuts.
That's their deal. Let him answer
Just,
that.
I don't know where that question's supposed to be answered or posed.
Thanks for the question. Just to put some, right, so what's different this year, and we know in past years, we come before the city council asking for a budget increase, some number of positions. I mean, there's always been the question of, well, you're asking for 50 positions, but you're cutting it by 25, so it's a net 25 add, right? In past years, we've had those discussions. What's different this year is that we started with a budget that was already level service. We know we had to scale it back for the reasons I mentioned earlier about student enrollment. But to be clear, this is not the budget we asked for.
Right.
Or we're not getting what we asked for. It's a bit different in this scenario. And the reason why we haven't encountered this before, in these deadlines, you're right, it's always been June by the time it's finalized. But we weren't talking about reduction in force or cutting staff. We were talking about cutting new ads. That's very, very different. So what's different here is that we started with a $15 million increase over the current fiscal year. That's a level service budget. We didn't add positions to it. And we've since cut then, respectively, expenses to nearly $3 million. Additional salary cuts of the 81 positions, nearly $5 million. Total cuts already, as of before this additional $4 million, is $7.7 million already in reductions. So I make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that we're not coming here today saying, yeah, it's only this, it's only that. This is an $11 million net impact, which is well above, right? So
From the 15 million you asked for.
Right, but that's a level service. We're not talking about
Understand.
reducing added positions, just to be clear on that. So, yeah, we're going to have to take a little gamble on this one and trust that we're working in good faith with everybody at this room and on public camera. So we're going to have to make the transfer notifications prior to June 1st. That's required under the contract, as has been pointed out by the previous speaker. And then by June 15th, we'll hopefully have an indication on the first reading by the city council on the second. But just to be clear one last time, that this $4 million final, which is likely 3.2 after the Chapter 70 increase, still nets out the reductions we talked about, I mentioned earlier for Chapter 70 increase, the carryover from this year, the special education risk of transportation and translation services, in addition to the roster of the 35 staff members.
Over the 81.
Over the 81.
Okay.
So it's not like we're 81 and done. We're still talking about something up to 116. It could be lesser, depending on how much of that carryover, but let's call it between 31 and 35 positions that the school committee will have to deliberate on. Just want to make sure we're clear on the facts of the matter when we
Mr.
walk
Chairman.
out of the room.
Mr. King.
The facts are the same. In past years, we could have cut the budget in the last month too. So you have a general idea, as Phil said, what the budget's going to be. That's all you had in past Junes. You made educated decisions, I guess, to do whatever it was, because we never had a problem. I trust you'll do that again this year. But I just think we're overstating a little bit this issue of June. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
I think you can read, I thought I had the floor.
You, Mr. King.
Thank you. I think you can read the room, as Phil said. I don't know what else we can do for you. There has to be a process. So that's the same position you were in the past years. You could read the room. So overall, different, maybe a little bit, in that the level of where the budget's going to end up is compared to where you were the year before. I get that, okay? But that's not a surprise to you tonight on May, whatever this is, 26th. You've known that for the last couple of months. So, I mean, it is what it is, but I think you have a pretty clear indication on May 26th where you're probably going to end up. I know you might not like it either. I appreciate that very much, but that's probably where you're going to end up.
Somebody in the back raised their hand. Did somebody else have their hand in the back that needs to speak? Just because Ms. Barnhill.
Are we good to accept the motion to adjourn?
No, we got one problem. We didn't do our minutes.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
I just, on the city council side, the finance subcommittee meetings of May 7th, 2027.
Motion to approve is
2026, I mean.
I'm seeing that there's a public comment on hand raised.
Okay, well, we'll get to that too then. Now it's Mr. Bloomfield, so that's
Second.
given. I got a motion, I have a second. All those in favor of those minutes, please raise your hand.
Already spoke.
Mr. Bloomfield already spoke on the budget, so,
Okay, so
Ms.
motion to adjourn.
Ms. Barnhill has a motion to adjourn on the table. Was there a second?
I'll move we adjourn our meeting.
Okay, so.
You gotta let her adjourn her
I'm gonna let
meeting.
her. oh,
So
I'm sorry.
motion
I
to
might-
adjourn. Is there a motion? Okay.
So moved.
Moved by Jen, seconded by Kyle. Any discussion? No. Seeing none. Roll call vote. District 2,
Raise your
yes.
hand.
District 6, yes. All in favor? Yes. All right, we're adjourned at 7:26 PM.
City council side, we have a motion. Did we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by, okay, Stefanini. Roll call. We don't need a roll call. All those in favor, raise your hand. Voted unanimously, 4-0. Thank you.